Are we ready, Council President? I just want to let them know.
Ready? I'm ready. Are you ready?
Yeah, I think I'm ready now. Yes, sir. All right, let's wait to hear from them right now. Okay, just have to add one more person. All right, they're rolling up here. Are we? Let's see. And can I have a sound check?
Okay, just in this.
Matt, sound check, please. Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Good afternoon, folks. We're going to come back. We will now reconvene from this morning's hearing. Mr. Stitt, one more time, I'm going to ask you to take roll for those members that are in attendance. And again, for those members, please say multiple words so it will activate the computer screen to show your attendance for those individuals who are witnessing this on Channel 64. Mr. Stitt?
Councilwoman Bass?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Councilwoman Brooks?
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your lunch.
Yes.
Councilman Dom?
Good afternoon, Council President, colleagues.
Councilmember Gaultier?
Present. Good afternoon, everyone.
Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson? Councilmember Gilmore Richardson? Councilman Green?
Good afternoon.
Councilwoman Ginn?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Council President.
Good afternoon.
Councilman Heenan? Councilman Johnson? Councilman Jones?
Good afternoon, colleagues, Mr. President, and members of the administration.
Councilman O?
Yes, good afternoon.
Councilman O'Neill?
Present.
Councilwoman Parker?
Thank you, Matt. I'm present. Hello, everyone.
Thank you. Councilwoman Keona Sanchez,
Good afternoon, I'm present.
Councilman Squilla, Councilman Thomas,
Good afternoon, I'm present.
Council President Clark.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Just to recap, this morning we had the presentation on the 5-year plan, capital program, and mayor's office. Again, there were a number of questions that were asked that could not be answered today because of the condensed schedule. I want to reiterate the need to get those questions responded to as quickly as possible as we deliberate this very, very significant budget. This afternoon, we will have community college, aviation, and water. So we will.
Hey Matt, sorry, I hit hang up instead of unmute when you called for me, so I am here.
And I'm here as well, Council President. It's Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
The gang's all here. Thank you. We will now resume the public hearing. Mr. Stitt, would you please read the name of the next person we have on the list to testify?
Sure, it's Dr. Generals from Community College, Philadelphia.
Thank you. And good afternoon, Doctor.
Thank you. We also have our chairman, Jeremiah White, who I believe will provide some opening comments, and then, if you will, I will follow up with specifics to the budget. Jeremiah, if that's okay, Mr. President.
Absolutely, Doctor. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council President Clark and distinguished council members. I'm Jeremiah White, Chairman of the Community College Board of Trustees, and I'm grateful to once again be able to speak with you. Now more than ever, a college degree is essential to reducing poverty and in closing the income and equity gap. We believe all students deserve a shot at better paying jobs that offer full benefits and access to thriving schools and safe communities. Each year, however, thousands of our students or potential students walk away from their dreams because they cannot pay tuition while supporting themselves and their families. Higher education and the economy have failed to offer social and economic mobility to many people of color and to people in low wealth communities. And we all know this must change. As we have seen recently, how a health crisis can expand into an economic collapse and high unemployment, and the range of barriers that emerge devastate families who are already vulnerable. At CCP, we recognize that if Philadelphia is truly prioritizing inclusion and racial equity, then we must go beyond offering free college access. Students need an ecosystem that supports them through daily life changes by providing food, transportation, textbooks, stipends, childcare, academic intervention, the moment they start and kicks into high gear when they fall behind in class. This is our unique mission, to ensure that a college education is a right, not a privilege. Prior to COVID-19, over 80% of the college's graduates remained employed in the region, strengthening the economy, workforce, and community. With the pandemic, however, we've seen a dramatic loss in jobs and critical structures of support. Philadelphians are counting on us more than ever to deliver real opportunities and rebuild the middle class. Even before COVID-19 reshaped the economic landscape, Philadelphia had the highest poverty rate amongst the 10 major cities at 24.5%. While data shows that 85% of high school students nationwide earn a high school diploma in 4 years, in Philadelphia, the graduation rate for high school students is at 67%. This is our normal. People will say we want to go to back to normal. We don't want to return to this normal. Or we don't want to return or go to a new normal based on these facts and figures. For many of the city's students, Community College of Philadelphia is their only viable option for continuing their education beyond high school. With your continued help and financial support, we can provide accessible and affordable gateways into the middle class for students like Trina Jones, a widow with 4 children who recently completed CCP's nursing program. Trina, along with 3 of her peers in the Keystone Educational Yield Success, a program that assists CCP students receiving food stamps and other public assistance, earned nursing degrees in May. That's what we're about. They are entering professions where starting salaries average $59,000 per year in Philadelphia, which will change their trajectory, not only for them, but of their families. So again, I encourage you to continue your support, and we deeply appreciate the support Council has given to us over the years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Doctor.
Good afternoon, President Clark and members of the City Council. Thank you all for giving us the opportunity to give testimony to our request for fiscal year 2021. I hope that you're all safe and well, and that your families are keeping well, and that you as well as we are looking forward to the day when we could do this in person. By way of backdrop, I thought it was important for me to give you a little bit of context of where we are as we move towards this next budget year. I wanted to begin by assuring you that despite the catastrophic nature of this disruption, the students at Community College of Philadelphia and the citizens of Philadelphia have continued to receive a quality education at CCP. Over the course of 2 weeks, we were able to transition 1,500 classes to either remote or distance learning courses. That involves not just the actual physical transition, but also the training that goes involved. It also requires a certain amount of training for the students. In addition to the direct classroom instruction, we provided an entire portfolio of complementary services in the form of student services, advising, counseling, tutorial services. It was an enormous lift, and it was done during the spring semester within the course of 2 weeks. I think that's important as we move towards the next fiscal year. Our ask for the next fiscal year is about $8,050,000, of which $3.3 million will go towards our operating budget, and $4.8 will go towards the Cato Scholarship. I think a good place for us to begin this conversation really has to do with the needs that our students have in order to be academically successful. In order for us to have been successful during the course of this pandemic, not only did we have to make the transition, but we had to provide extra services, extra dollars for our students to be able to meet the daily needs sometimes that they have that we were often already providing to them. So for example, over the course of the last 2 weeks, we've given out almost $35,000 in cash to students who needed money just for food, for housing, and some of the basic needs. Part of the portfolio of support services that we provided, in addition to the direct academic and student support services, had to do with these social and economic needs that we provide through our portal. Students are able to link on to what we refer to as CCP Cares, and they can get direct care relative to what their needs are within 24 hours. So we've been very supportive, but in the process of doing this, it becomes crystal clear that their economic needs are directly tied to their academic and student support, their academic and student success abilities. So this ask of $8,050,000 goes directly to academic services and academic needs that our students have. Beginning with the Cato Scholarship, I think we can all agree that probably the biggest impediment to moving out of poverty would be education. The educational needs, the educational attainment is probably the single most important factor that we have in order to move the needle, to move citizens out of poverty. We think this Cato Scholarship does that. It makes a big, giant effort towards doing that. We know that the single most, the largest impediment towards student success is being able to meet the financial needs associated with going to college. So this scholarship, as you know, is a last dollar scholarship. This is for students that qualify for financial aid, and the college will meet their additional needs that go beyond whatever the financial aid doesn't meet. That would include, of course, whatever fees, whatever book needs they have. But in addition to that, it gives them a $1,500 stipend to help them meet the needs that so many of our students have that have to do with some of their basic social needs, like hunger, like housing, like childcare, like transportation, and so forth. This is not an unusual request. We know that almost half of the states in the country, around 24 states, already are providing free tuition to their community college students. We think if we're going to be competitive as a city, that we have to address this issue of higher education cost. And so we think the Cato Scholarship, which in its current form will start in the spring. As you remember, we came to you back in the pre-COVID-19 days, and we wanted to start in the fall. But we think because of practical reasons, it's best for us to start in the spring, and we will be introducing our first class of Cato Scholars in the spring of 2021. The projection is over 4,000 students will be able to benefit from this. This will add immensely to the graduation rates, to the educational attainment rates of the city of Philadelphia, and we strongly hope and strongly encourage that you support this scholarship program. The 3.3 goes to our regular operating costs. These are basic costs that continue to increase, both in terms of salaries and benefits, as well as utilities, health benefits, utilities, the cost of technologies, the basic cost of running an institution the size of ours has built-in increases, and the 3.3 would go towards meeting the much-needed needs that we have to be able to put into place in order to provide the quality education that I'm sure the City Council has come to expect from us. So in addition to those operating costs, we continue to provide quality in the area of student success by way of the support services that we provide. We've increased the number of advisors that help our students work one-on-one with our students. We've redesigned our college-wide curriculum into the form of a macro curriculum that we refer to as guided pathways. We are in the final stages of renovating our library and converting it into a learning commons, which is the modern version of libraries. As you know, we've begun the process of developing and building a career and tech center out in West Philly to replace the existing career tech center, the existing center that we have there. We will go from 10,000 square feet to 70,000 square feet. But more importantly, it will allow us to provide the type of workforce and economic development programs that the city so direly needs. So everything from the entire advanced manufacturing suite that would include electromechanics and welding and CNC computer control, CNC computer numerical controls, welding, which is a program that has an incredibly good success rate, and then of course expanding our automotive tech program. As you know, auto technology has changed, and it's become much more of an industry where it's basically computers on wheels. And so for our students to become competitive, we need to be able to provide them with the educational experience that they will have out in the industry. And so the Career and Advanced Tech Center is really designed to do precisely that. In addition to that, we think that we're very good partners in the city in terms of a lot of the volunteer and service that we provide to the city. We have a large, robust civic engagement program whereby our students and our faculty have adopted 2 schools, and they go into those schools and they help mentor and they tutor and they provide role models for those students. All of our health science programs have built-in service learning programs. So students, in order for them to get their degree, they have to do a certain amount of voluntary service. We have a dental clinic that provides services for the local communities. We have a program for foster care support, and that's been very successful. In fact, the entire state of Pennsylvania has modeled its program on our foster care program, so we're very proud of that. And then finally, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we are very much about trying to deal with this issue of poverty in the context of education. Our students can't get past the math final or calculus final if they're hungry, or if they're worried about the fact that they lost their babysitter, or they're worried about an eviction notice. So through our single stop program, we've been able to save and to help students with $8 to be able to use Maslow's hierarchy, deal with those basic needs, so that they can come to the college and be successful. But in addition to that, I mentioned earlier that we've put together what we refer to as CCP Cares. This is a compilation of support service in conjunction with the neighborhood services. We've realized that many of the students that are coming to the college are students that are receiving services out in the community, and we feel that the best way to serve them is to have an organic and a unified effort in providing those services. So we've done a lot of work in that regard, and like I said, we have a portal whereby a student can log on to that portal, and within 24 hours they can get the necessary support that they would need to be successful. Jeremiah mentioned the KEYS program. It's been universally successful. That students, in order to be eligible for that program, they have to be on TANF or SNAP benefits. And the success rates have just been off the charts. Students have come through that program, and many of them have stepped into jobs in nursing and culinary, whereby they are above the minimum. They're certainly way above the minimum wage in most cases. As Jeremiah mentioned, in healthcare professions, they're making upwards of $59,000 to $60,000. So with that, I'm sure you have questions for us. City council members have questions for us, and I'll defer at this point to whatever questions you might have. We have the team here. If I can't answer them, hopefully somebody will be able to do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony, and thank you for the great job that you guys have been doing over the years. Just got a couple of questions before we get to the members. You referenced it to some degree with respect to possibly reintegrating the students back to campus post-COVID, and you talked about remote and distance learning. Is there what does that mean, particularly the distance learning? I know what the remote means, but is there a possibility that you could possibly see students going back to actual classrooms on campus in the foreseeable future?
We don't, at this point, necessarily see that as a possibility for the fall. We've put together a team of 7 different task forces to look at all the contingencies, the educational contingencies, the facilities, student services, communications, our external and internal constituencies. And we've come together with a matrix, which really the report was due today. But in listening through the conversations and the dialogue, we don't believe that it's realistic to go back to face-to-face in the fall semester. Southeast Pennsylvania is still in the red. I suspect that won't change for a couple of weeks. The time that's needed to provide a quality education in either virtual, distance, or remote takes time to rebuild the curriculum. It's not just turn the switch and you can go from distance learning to face-to-face. Plus the fact that we firmly believe that until there's a vaccine or a solution to this problem, we don't see, without doubling the amount of classrooms that we have, how we could adequately provide the protocols consistent with social distancing. So you can't run classes with 25 students in them. You would have to run 3 classes with 6 or 7 students. But with that said, we do have some classes that absolutely cannot run unless they're face-to-face. You can imagine dental tech, auto tech, some of those classes. So we're looking at rescheduling them now. You know, students have programs they have to take gen ed, they have to take courses that are not experiential based. So we're hoping that programmatically we can move those students to an online or remote version and postpone those experiential based courses until the spring. But with that said, if we get any kind of indication that we can start transitioning back, we will start transitioning the support services. So advising, counseling, the library, it will all have to be done with, you know, appropriate social distancing protocols or CDC guidelines and so forth. So students will have to make appointments, we'll have to have PPE, we'll have to have, you know, the entire lineup of support necessary for that to happen. But at this time, we haven't made the general announcement at this point yet, but we're pretty sure that we're not going to be able to run face-to-face classes in the fall. And then finally, let me say that we do have the capacity to add on to that. So if by some miracle, let's say late August, September, we get the green light and we can do it, and we've already had our schedule in place, we can run short-term classes, which we already do. So the regular semester is 15 weeks. We can overlay that 15 weeks with a 7-week or even some 5-week semesters. So we will be able to transition if we get the green light. But right now, it looks like we will be fully online with our 15-week semester. We've been enrolling students for the fall since before this happened. So we already have over 4,000 students registered for the fall, and we really need to begin making plans for that.
Green light would be coming from?
It will start with state government, and city government, yeah.
Okay.
But then beyond that, you know, we have our own protocols. You know, there's certain guidelines that we have to, you know, we have regulatory circumstances that we have to follow in our health sciences especially. We already have limitations to how many students could be in a class and what kind of space they have to have. So it will all have to come together before a final decision is made.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's important to know, because I know the conversation has been around public schools and, you know, the likelihood of being able to go back in the classrooms. We have some external people from outside of the local government suggesting somehow that that's extremely doable in September. But whatever, I won't get into that. Community college, because of the nature of what it is and its structure and the ability to be flexible and to address the new types of opportunities. And one of the things that I think is key as we talk about recovery, will you be in a position, or who do you interact with, be it from a lobbyist or be it from a federal government or local government, in terms of understanding the potential needs and the potential for those economies that will materialize as a result of this COVID virus? I do believe that things will be done differently for a long, long time. And there will be industries that will come about as a result of the new regulations, the new standards associated with all the things we're doing. Do you look at that in terms of your ability to grow or your ability to add curriculums as a result of what we're seeing with this pandemic and the long-term implications of it?
Absolutely. That's at least half the conversation that's going on right now. We can't let the crisis bury us into, lifelong misery. The opportunities that present themselves in terms of new technologies, new pedagogies, we've already witnessed, some faculty who realized in the past, their view was you couldn't teach this online. Well, now that they're forced to do it, they realize the benefits of virtual realities and virtual classrooms and simulations. Our health sciences, under the guidance of the accrediting agencies, are finding whole new ways to provide clinical experiences for their students. So I think the potential for opening up, a virtual learning environment beyond what it is. Don't forget we've always done some distance learning, but I think now we can exponentially grow that area, and I think relate it to the new industries that will come about. Now that businesses are realizing that they can run their business remotely, that they can do things through a virtual reality. You've seen the entertainment business, what they're able to do in terms of a virtual format. And so all of that presents the opportunities for new jobs and new skill sets that we all, quite frankly, will have to come to grips with. And I think, we have an advantage because our students are going through this. If you only look at it as online learning, that's one thing. But in curriculum parlance, there's also collateral learning. There's collateral, benefits to learning online because you're learning the technologies and you're becoming more adept at that. And I think the more they do that, in addition to the expansion of our curriculum and program efforts, that they're going to be better prepared for the future that's going to present itself in another year, if not sooner. It's already presenting itself now.
Right. Yeah, no, we're going to be, so we want to have a conversation with you about that because, let's just call it like it is. The bottom line is the city of Philadelphia has been bleeding revenue as a result of this, and at some point we have to figure out a way to get some revenue enhancements, and if we can put more people back to work utilizing new strategies and utilizing new opportunities, we need to do that in a meaningful way, and I know that will be a significant part of our focus as we move towards yellow and some of the other colors that the governor has recommended. Thank you for that thought. One last thing, and kind of related to a degree because of the school district is having its challenges, this whole issue around dual enrollment, and if you have the capacity, utilizing your remote possibilities, it sounds like you may be a little farther ahead than the school district, the possibility of taking advantage of that, your skill set, your technology in the community college, and taking some of the students on this dual enrollment program and expanding it to allow more opportunities for the school district if and when they go back into buildings to have more socially distanced and some of the things that will be needed there. So I would hope that you guys would interact and figure out a way to expand that to give them some assistance on trying to get back to some distance learning capacity within the schools.
Absolutely. Dr. Height and I meet on a fairly regular basis. Right now, even as we moved through the spring semester, we had about 800 students who were dual enrolled students. Their experience with us didn't stop. So they continue to learn online, and they continue to, to grow educationally, and they receive grades. By the way, we've graduated. We didn't have a ceremony, but we graduated a little over 1,900 students at that spring semester. So, my mantra is that we need to be more K-16, and that's what we're striving for. Our dual enrollment is a major part of what we're doing. The Cattle Scholarship has large consideration for dual enrollment dollars, I believe. Significant amount of money that's committed towards that effort. We know educationally that's the route, that students, if you set a high bar for them, they will aspire to reach and obtain that bar. And dual enrollment does that every time. So we're very happy with that.
Look forward to helping you on that. Thank you very much. Doc, I'm going to turn to my colleagues. Again, time frame is condensed, and sorry for, again, one more time abusing my privilege of being the chair, going over the 5-minute limit, but I'm going to ask us to kind of go through that so we can get a couple of rounds in this afternoon session. So first up, I'm going to ask Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. President, and Dr. General and Jeremiah, good to see you all. My first question I want to start with, I want to piggyback on the Council President's comments about revenue generators. We know that here in the city of Philadelphia, when we talk about revenue generation along with job creation, we refer to our small businesses. They are invaluable. Kudos to the City of Philadelphia's Department of Commerce, who working in conjunction with Council via a committee that the Council President established. They've been doing a yeoman's job and doing their best to provide services, supports to small businesses who are trying to adapt and, in essence, just stay alive and remain viable. With that being said, Dr. General's two programs that are very dear to my heart. One, Power Up Your Business, and the other, the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. I was heartened, I have to be honest, to hear how they quickly work to try to address some of the needs of those small businesses. And at the recent graduation ceremony, listening to the grit and perseverance that these small business owners have had to just employ in order to just keep their heads above water has been amazing. Tell me about Power Up Your Business. Tell me about the response that we've been receiving from our neighborhood-based commercial corridor businesses, and what do we need to keep you alive and thriving, the program?
So Power Up is thriving. You and I were able to speak to the last graduating class, and we heard, the success and the encouragement that they are giving one another, and the inspiration that they give us, knowing that you have these types of entrepreneurs in the community who are creating jobs, creating revenue, and creating opportunities for their communities. We've expanded. We've pretty much reached capacity in terms of the numbers of individuals that we can serve with the original budget, which, as you know, was four years ago, $800,000. We would hope that at some point we can begin to expand that so we can provide a larger scope of services to these individuals. It's been incredibly successful in that every community that we go into, we have full classes that come online to learn the curriculum that we've put together for them.
Doc, excuse me for interjecting. This constituency, you're not talking about sort of just mainstream, large-sized businesses. Are these business owners coming from one neighborhood versus the other? What's the demographic of the small business participating?
Well, the demographics, first of all, are largely minority and women. Carol's on the line, and she can give specifics. And it also represents every councilmatic district. One of the major structures of this program was to ensure that we went into the neighborhoods where the commercial corridors are, the so-called mom and pop stores, and that we provided service for businesses that were struggling. And we were able to do that. We were able to provide technical advice, but also through the peer learning process that we put in place, they were able to self-motivate one another because they know they're not the only ones in these particular circumstances, and they were able to call on one another. We know that the sort of social network that's created with these small businesses add gravitas to the entire process. But I think, what makes it a gold standard is that it is largely Black and brown women, and the program sees every single councilmatic district in the city of Philadelphia.
So just thank you for your work there. Please continue to communicate with council in ways that we can be supportive. And I'll end with this question. Tell me about the CARES Act funding and let me know whether or not these numbers are accurate. The last time I heard, I thought CCP had received $16 million. That was $8 million for students and $8 million for infrastructure. Talk to me about those numbers, whether or not they're accurate, and how have you been employing the use of the CARES dollars?
Yes, they are accurate, but they're very restrictive, and the headlines are very misleading. The $8 million that go to students is a pass-through $8 million. We are not allowed to advise them how to spend it. We can't encourage them to pay their tuition. We can't encourage them to pay back bills. We have to just give them the dollars. So we've set up a portal whereby they can go and apply for these dollars, and at a minimum, they can get from $500 to over $6,000 based on whatever their claim to COVID-19 disruption has been to their lives. So that's $8 million that we cannot touch, and we have to be accountable for how that money was spent. The other $8 million is the institutional dollars, which initially we thought it would enable us to recover some of the revenue loss that came about as a result of tuitions and enrollment drop, but you cannot use it for enrollment drop. That too has to be used directly. That's not my phone.
That's not you, Doc.
The clock, just finish up. That's how
That too, those monies cannot be used for revenue, so it has to be used for direct losses related to COVID-19. So, for example, we purchased an online tutoring service. We could recover that. Just recently, we purchased lab equipment that students can take home so that they can work remotely, so we can cover that. It does not allow you to cover revenue loss, which right now, we're looking at the possibility of $10 million if the enrollment doesn't turn around based on...
You said $10 million?
10, that's right, because of what we're right now projecting. I'm the eternal optimist. I believe we're making that projection in the eye of the storm, and we don't know how things are going to play out. But if we don't get some relief from the lost revenue, we have to think of some other strategies to be able to deal with that. So that $8 million cannot be plopped into the tuition loss that we are dealing with right now. And then we also, so that was 16, we also did get $1 million as a predominantly Black institution. That $1 million is allowed to be used for revenue loss. However, our Center for Male Engagement is funded through that grant, through that program, the predominantly Black institution. So we're kind of holding back on that to make sure that that money doesn't get subsumed in refunding the Center for Male Engagement. If it doesn't, and the Center for Male Engagement gets another round of grant funding for its program, then that will give us $1 million that we can use specifically for revenue loss.
Thank you, Mr. President, Dr. Generals. It sounds like CCP is going through the same thing that we as a city has, and that is when we've received the stimulus dollars, we have not had the ability to use that revenue to replace revenue that was lost as a result of COVID. And then when people see the very tough choices that are placed before council, they're thinking all of this federal money came, that should be able to fix all of your problems. And we're saying, wait a minute, the rules and regs of how we can use those dollars are not what you think. So thank you for your clarity. If we have a second round, I'll come back with other questions.
Sure. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Generals, I have a question in reference to the incoming classes. When we come in, we think about how many or the percentage of new freshmen that usually have to take remedial classes, and post-COVID or in the midst of COVID, the new class of 2020 that may be entering CCP had already had some learning loss due to COVID, as well as, the regular summer loss. Do you have any plans in place to help support students that are transitioning in?
So in terms of dealing with distance learning or online instruction, we have programs that we're putting in place, they're virtual programs to help students understand the technology so that they can navigate the technology. We found, when we surveyed the students, we found that that's the biggest frustration, dealing with Zoom, dealing with these different technologies. So we're putting up free workshops that they can attend throughout the course of the semester that will allow them to do that. The second biggest, and this is in the form of announcement, we are moving away from the AccuPlacer and will be much more dependent on students' transcripts. So we have an entire grid that lays out where the student's GPA is and what level of placement they can go into. So anything above, I believe it's 2.75, we will look at just the transcripts and make the placement. If they're under 2.75, we'll test them. And then thirdly, all along, we have been working with ways to mitigate the developmental experience, primarily with concurrent enrollment. So if a student does show a need for English improvement or development, we are allowing them to take the first 100 level courses with that English course. So it's more of a horizontal alignment than a vertical alignment. In the past, you had to get through remedial 01 or 4, and then you could go to social 1. If you were a business major, you wouldn't see that business class if you were in remediation sometimes for a year. So we pretty much eliminated all of that. We call it the ALP, Accelerated Learning Program method, whereby the classes are smaller classrooms. They're taught by the same teacher, so the same teacher is teaching the content course as well as teaching the developmental course. And we have found some significant improvements in that. And then finally, our guided pathways approach towards education has shown huge success, both in terms of student success, persistence, and retention. And what that is basically we've organized the college into these 7 meta majors. So if you're a business major, if you come as a new student and you want to be a business major, you go into that cohort of students who not only will get business courses, but their advisors, their counselors, their entire support services based around that particular program. And the same is true with health science, the same is true with the liberal arts. And so we found that, by getting an experience relative to the pathway and the ultimate career outcomes that they want to pursue, that students do internalize their own sense of motivation, and also the alignment, the curricular alignment is much tighter, and it helps them to move forward. And then we've spent a lot of money in support services, tutoring support, counseling support, advisement support. Our faculty constantly work towards improving and innovating curriculum. Our faculty are amazing in their ability to innovate new ways to teach, the various courses that we have. And I think the proof is in the pudding. Our health sciences programs, they're all doing fabulous work, and they're all testing at the top of their particular accrediting license requirements.
Thank you, Dr. General. I'm a proud CCP graduate, so we've had really hard. So.
Great.
One other question: given the lack of funding from the state in previous years and the effect of COVID, how will you be able to mitigate the impact on students, and specifically around raising tuition and fees?
We will not raise tuition and or fees. I've been here 6 years. We've done it once, and we have no plans to do it again.
Anonymous is now exiting.
We have no plans to do it again. As we speak with you, we're still waiting on the state to see what their final budget will be for us. We don't know. We know that the state is to receive or has received CARES money at the discretion of the governor. So we're hoping that he moves towards giving us dollars that can recover some of these revenue losses that we're experiencing. But at this point, we just don't know where the state is in terms of where they're going with their budget. I know that, we've been in contact with our delegation, Philadelphia delegation, to try to support and push. Governor Wolf says he's a workforce training development person, and that's a wonderful thing, but I think he needs to realize that workforce development includes the salaries we have to pay our faculty who teach in the health sciences, the salaries we pay our faculty in the business program, the computer science programs, and so forth. So at this point, his initial budget was flat, but we're hoping that he increases that, and then we'll be able to finalize our budget once that happens.
Thank you. One other thing, do you have any programs that focus on greener jobs? Economy jobs, I'm sorry.
We have courses. I don't know if we have programs. I know that we have courses that focus on green jobs and sustainability, and I know that the Career Advanced Tech Center is building in an alternative fuels program that will be part of that. So yes.
Thank you.
A little, not a lot, but a little.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Jim.
Thank you very much, Council President, and good afternoon, President Generals. Nice to see you. So I wanted to just check in. As you know, CCP is one of the areas that the city is, or the mayor has proposed for one of the most generous investments, especially at a very difficult budget time. If we're able to get the funding through, is there, can there be a commitment that, in addition to the fact that you said that there would be no tuition increases, can we be assured that there will also be no furloughs or layoffs should additional money come to CCP?
We've been working with the Federation, and we've embarked upon a voluntary furlough. And at this point, that's the only, I don't want to make promises here publicly, but at this point, that's the only.
How many people are being furloughed?
I believe the last number I saw was about 47.
47. Okay.
Yeah, 40, something like, 47. It's purely voluntary. You know that the CARES Act offered, in those cases, $600 more beyond what unemployment would pay. So, and in addition to that, we kept their health care. Our board passed a resolution to make sure that they did not lose their health care. So there is no plans for layoffs or any type of employment loss as a result of this. We went through, just so that you know, we went through the first month without even our temporary employees laying them off, that we kept them on to try to keep them on as long as possible. So the voluntary furlough is the only program we have in place with this regard.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so if additional money comes in, are you going to be rehiring those people, or are they still going to be furloughed? And are there
we will. I mean, it really has, yes, to both questions. If additional money comes in, we will rehire them. But it's also, these were people that really had nothing to do. I hate to put it that way. The buildings are closed. So we have security here and we have some construction workers, but the buildings are closed. So it really has as much to do with opening the building. We can at least get to that yellow stage. We can start opening the building and we'll call those people back.
There's no online classes. This was being
nobody in instructional was laid off. These are facilities, housekeepers. Mm-hmm. I think there might have been one or two administrators, but that was it. Okay,
so no adjuncts or anything like that.
Well, adjuncts are on an as-need basis. What we did do is, I don't know if Victoria's on the line, but we were able to provide for them the opportunity where they could collect unemployment as well. Yeah, so the number of classes were reduced, full-time faculty get the first choices, and some of the newer adjuncts did not get courses.
Okay, so what I'm trying to understand is that if additional funding comes through, it's important to not have the tuition increase, but do you still, can you make a commitment about no furloughs and no layoffs?
I can make a commitment that our goal is to keep everybody whole. That is our goal. I mentioned that we're looking at $10 million. If the money comes in, if we don't have the $10 million hole that I mentioned earlier, then yes, I can make that commitment. But with us looking at this, which by the way is very early, so I don't want this to come off as hysteria or a scare tactic. And we're in contact with the Federation on a regular basis, and they're always asking. And I have no intention, no plans, no goals to do that. But if for some reason we have a $10 million hole in our budget, and that is as a result that students are not coming and people don't have jobs, then we would have to rethink that. But right now, I'm committed to keeping everybody whole. That's my commitment, to keep everybody whole to the extent possible.
And the 50 people who have been currently voluntarily furloughed could always come back or...
I just got a message that it was 40. It wasn't 50. I thought it... Okay. Yes, 40. Right. And it's only till July 31st. That was the other message I got. I heard yesterday that the new stimulus package will extend that, but we don't know. The current one ends in July 31st. So at that point, the plan is to bring them back.
And your fiscal year ends when?
June 30th.
June 30th. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Dom.
Thank you.
Real quick, I just want to say I'm going to actually hand off the chair to Majority Leader Parker. Had something to do in another part of the House. so, all right, Council.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you, Dr. Generals, and thanks for the work you and your administration have been doing. You're doing a good job. I have a few quick questions. I'm going to follow up on the Council President's question about anticipating a full return to campus, which you don't know yet. But let's just assume for a moment that we get into the yellow, okay, and we are allowed to come back. What percentage do you think will come back versus want to learn online?
If we are in the yellow, we will not bring instruction back. The yellow.
Let's say the next level then.
All right. In the green, it will probably only at that point still be a partial opening because so many of our classes are above 24, 25. So in addition to the congregation of students, I mean, we have on any given semester 16,000 students. It would, unless we have lines and ropes all over the place keeping people apart, I don't know that it's really that possible for us to do that. We will, in the green, we will make every effort to schedule and to reduce the population on campus at any given time. In the yellow, the only thing we could possibly do is offer some of the services whereby we can have students come in on the basis of appointments, and we could set up the rope lines, and we'll be able to manage it. But the green, we would have to be pretty sure that we're capable of putting in place the protocols that will keep people safe. If the green still insists on social distancing with that 6 foot spread distance, that would be increasingly difficult for us to do. We'd be able to do some. Our labs, we'd probably be able to do because they tend to be smaller anyway. Some of our hands-on experience courses, we'd probably be able to do. But the gen ed courses that typically run 25 and above, we would probably struggle doing that. So that's why even if it goes into green in the fall, it's more than likely that we're going to be modified hybrid at least until the spring.
But it sounds to me like unless a vaccine comes out, you may even be over a year away from getting back to normalcy.
I think it's a matter of gradation. We can slowly move towards normalcy, but yeah, I think that's true with everybody.
Okay, but so let's just assume 2 years from now, hopefully we're back to normal by then. What do you think the impact from this pandemic will be on online learning versus taking classes at CCP? Do you think there'll be an increase of 20%, 10%, or no increase?
I think there will be an increase largely because more people will realize that we provide a quality online experience. I think there are still a large portion of students who really want face-to-face. Again, when we surveyed and we asked our students how they were doing, the issues we got back was they chose CCP because they wanted a face-to-face experience. They did not want to go online. And as you know, there are a lot of online opportunities. And the opportunity to study, the challenges for them, especially now because many of them have brothers and sisters or kids who are home as well, the challenge to try to get a place of quiet and a place of solitude where they can study is very difficult in some of the environments that they're living in. So they're struggling, and that's why we're providing all the social, economic support for them to help them. And as soon as we can open back up, we will begin to relieve some of that pressure, and some of them will come back. But I think to answer your question precisely, I think we will grow online because we'll get better at it. Students that have in the past never thought about it will decide if they want to do it. And I think, just our market span will extend beyond what we are currently doing, and we will grow. So I think the possibility for enrollment growth is there.
In the big picture, in the economy of Philadelphia and the U.S., it appears to me that jobs are going to change dramatically from this pandemic. More technology, more tech in every category of every job. Right. The question is, how is CCP handling that change in order to educate and train the graduates of CCP for that new economy?
So, a lot of that has to do with computer technologies and machine learning. A lot of it has to do with, the programs that we're currently offering to students that go into these programs that serve at the basis. Python, for example, we teach as a software program, and all of them are at the basis to the virtual world that we live in. And so I think we're preparing more students to step into this online virtual world economy that exists now, but will continue to grow. As I mentioned earlier, I mean, you've seen graduations are able to be conducted online, whole entertainment programs are able to be done online. And I think all of those opportunities will present themselves as opportunities for students to get jobs. And I think, this pandemic, you have to see the silver lining. The silver lining is that the economy as it currently exists will expand in the world of virtual realities and virtual online opportunities for students. And I think our students will be prepared for that.
Can I add something to that? I think also you have worked very hard to ensure that we have a strong relationship with the Commerce Department and with the economic development agencies in the city that can give us the information related to what they see and what kind of investments they're making in the economy in Philadelphia. So we're not operating kind of, on an island, given the nature of the kind of loss that we've had. And if you look at retail and the hospitals and the rest of it, I mean, major changes are occurring. So we have to work, and we are working, your team's working in partnership with everyone to try to get a handle on what are the kind of new opportunities that are available. And I think the other part that you referenced, which I think is important for City Council to know, is that what this also has highlighted is that Community College of Philadelphia, the value of the work that we do, whether it's online courses, in-face or whatever, is really becoming realized, because there are a lot of people, and I'm sure you've talked to family, friends, relatives, who are talking about sending their kids to some of these higher priced schools when they're doing it online. So if they're paying, $20,000 or $30,000 a year to go to a school online, that's not what they bought into. And so a lot of parents are thinking about, why do I need to do that? So I think that our value proposition as a higher educational institution and a training workforce development institution is good. So we're not just looking at the downside. We're also looking at what the opportunities and upside are. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a lot of opportunities. One last comment. Do we have a course for adults in our city that could get them trained in all the new technology that's come out of this pandemic?
At this point, we don't have a course. I think we are looking across the landscape to see what that one course would be. I don't know that one course could do it. I think, it's everything from programming to software development to video development and promulgation. Lots of things are being done on video, and you don't need to know, you don't need to have a software background to be able to create videos. And so I think we're looking across the landscape in our continuing ed division, where they're looking and investigating, not just with the Commerce and some of the city government, but also a lot of the private businesses. There's a lot of startups and young companies in this city that could use the experiences of our students. So we're talking to them and finding out how we can serve them in terms of the skill sets that they need in order to grow their business.
Thank you, Dr. Jensen. And thank you, Councilman Dom. Great questions, and we'll try to get to a second round. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gaultier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, Dr. Generals.
Hello.
How do the revisions to the Cato scholarship budget affect the number of awards you can give, the money each recipient would receive for living and other expenses, and the wraparound supports that CCP could provide to those students?
The original budget was for $8 million, I believe, a little bit more than that. And starting in the spring, over the course of a year, it was pretty much, for this year anyway, reduced by half, 50%. I don't know, Judy, are you there? You have to...
Yes, I am here. And there has not been a change to the support services, the funding for support services or other aspects of the Cato scholarship. It is the case that rather than starting in the fall, it was starting in the spring. So the number of students served is reduced. However, and we are also not going to be having the funding for that first year for the returning students, current students. So it is for new students, first-time, full-time new students. Essentially, the vast majority of the initiative has been preserved moving forward.
Thank you. Our offices met a couple of times before COVID-19 hit to hear about your vision for transforming your West Philadelphia campus located in the third district. Is there a possibility that, you know, your projected budget shortfalls could impact the vision for that expansion? And can you talk about that?
I think there is the possibility. We've been stalled at this point because of COVID-19, being able to get the permits and to get zoning to have a meeting so that we can begin to move forward. But the actual development and construction has probably been pushed back 6 months at least. Again, we still have at least a third of the dollars that we're ready to move forward. We've already floated, you know, just $10 million worth of bonds. But we think that part of our growth strategy is embedded in that center. I know that, you know, our ability to provide the types of career technical, you know, I'm talking about the technical types of training that will help students find jobs in an advanced tech society, will grow out of that center. We were in deep conversations with Toyota as a significant partner in that project, and we've had conversations with the other manufacturers throughout the city, but the COVID has kind of put a buffer between where those talks were and where we are right now. But the plan, it will not stop. We will continue. We will continue to move forward, and hopefully with city council support, you know, which is part of the reason we were asking for this support, you know, because we do need to hire faculty. We will need to hire support services, custodians, and so forth. So our plan is to continue to move forward with that project.
Great. And then one last question. How is the plan to create a workforce curriculum in partnership with LNI to fill much needed vacancies in inspector positions being affected by potential budget cuts or potential budget shortfall?
We were scheduled to meet with Councilman Heenan to talk about this, and that meeting got canceled, and within the week we were in COVID-19. So we really haven't followed up, and I don't have a real answer for you at this point, but I know that there is a need, and we were planning to come to this meeting to discuss how we could provide services for it. Our thinking is through our continuing ed division, whereby it's non-credit, it's short-term training, that would be the ideal place where that can happen. And I hope that we can jumpstart those conversations again in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gaultier. The chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Doctor, once again, good seeing you.
How are you?
Another year. I was in a conversation about incarceration and mass incarceration at that with Dr. Good, who runs Amici. And he said to me, real simply, cutting through the red tape and bureaucracy, if you want to reduce crime, increase graduation rates in the worst performing schools by 50%, and there's a direct correlation between a drop in crime where every time you increase educational attainment. And I immediately thought of your dual enrollment program. And when the mayor talked about the Cato Scholarship, I got excited. I was in the room with member Brooks and member Gautier. We just started shooting ideas. And one of the things that I raised to you was that in my alma mater, Overbrook, there was less than admirable recruitment coming from the school. So I went back and talked to Dr. Lee, who is the principal there. And she said that it's a wonderful concept, a wonderful program, but you have criteria that each student has to meet. You guys assured me in that meeting that we were going to have a marketing program to underperforming schools, and then the virus hit. So I want to know, since COVID-19, have you rethought your strategies on how you're going to up the numbers from schools that need it most? A person, no disrespect to the under school called Central, but they don't need it as much as Overbrook. So how do you plan to market to those schools and in one blow be able to reduce crime, increase dual enrollment by marketing that tutorial assistance?
So we submitted a written.
Is he frozen? I gotta stop asking hard questions, Madam Chair.
Let me give him a call.
I gotta stop the hard questions.
He's, let's see, it looks like he's, oh, wait a minute, he was back.
Am I here? Can you hear me?
Okay.
Doc, just continue. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, so in our enrollment strategy and in conjunction with the Cato Scholarship, we have dollars that are dedicated to in recruitment outreach. We also have dollars that are dedicated to enrollment navigators. You know, part of the problems as we see is that students' ability to navigate through financial aid and registration and co-requisites and prerequisites are often impediments. So we think that by helping them navigate through that process that we will be able to retain many of them. But the core will be a more aggressive outreach to those communities like Overbrook and like some of the other colleges, some of the other high schools who are underperforming in our eyes in terms of sending students to CCP. We have that list. I think we've sent it. I don't know if you've seen it, but we have a list of exactly how many students come from each high school from around the city. And we will look at that list and develop strategies to be able to get into those schools and get into those neighborhoods so that we can promote the college and encourage students to come to Community College of Philadelphia. So yes, we do have a plan. We have a grand plan. Part of that plan, it is my hope to be able to hire a senior level vice president for enrollment management, which will give us the kind of singular focus what's needed relative to being able to aggressively and proactively recruit in very specific areas of the city, including Overbrook.
So, Madam Chair, finally, I've been in touch with many of the universities in my district, and they're all facing that quandary about whether to open or not in the fall in face-to-face. We might want to consider having a dialogue with all of them to talk about what happens. Because even though they don't have as much cost and there's some savings, you have to increase security. There's all kinds of other costs that are associated even when you don't have physical classes and do classes online. So it's so much of a problem. And in surrounding neighborhoods that used to have the hustle and bustle of other students, Member Gautier, that now won't have some of that, that might encourage some other elements to take advantage of the absence of students. Thank you, Madam Chair. We can't hear you.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson. Thank you, Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Generals. Thank you so much for all of your work. I just have a quick question because two of my other questions have already been asked, but I have a question around enrollment. Just for the record, if you could talk about your enrollment numbers for summer 2020 and also for the fall 2020 and how that differs from last year.
Right now, it differs significantly. Our original enrollment projections were based on summer 1, which starts today, summer 2, which starts July 1st, or right after July 4th, Independence Day, and then the fall semester. So making those projections right now without a clear message about what kind of class offerings we have, our summer 1 went from 25% down a couple of weeks ago to today, it's only 3.5% down. So once we were clear about what we were doing, students enrolled. Summer 2 right now is about 17% down, but we will transition to focusing on summer 2 tomorrow with messaging for that. The fall semester is down about 30% at this point. But my contention is we haven't put the energy behind what needs to be done, and students just don't know. I mean, I believe students are holding back as much as we are. So those are the numbers. Last year, those numbers were roughly 3 to 5% down. Like all the colleges in the state of Pennsylvania, we're struggling with getting students to the college. So But that's something we can manage. 3 to 5% down is within a rounding error of our total budget. So we can manage that. What we can't manage is 30% down, which is what we're looking at right now in the fall. But again, the first summer semester, we went from over 20% down to right now we're 3.5% down. And so I do think those numbers will change.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question was also around the Career and Tech Center in West Philly. I know when we met, we spoke about the expansion for that site and how the additional opportunities for experience-based learning will expand at CCP. And I too had a question around how you all are thinking about workforce development as it relates to our city's COVID-19 response and ensuring that you can put together training programs that will be applicable for the jobs that we anticipate, particularly some of the jobs at the city level. So if you could just briefly talk about, workforce development and kind of your vision and goals for that center when you're able to get back online, because I think that will be vitally important to the work that we do from a city perspective moving forward.
So I think that our work has continued. Our curriculum development programmatic work has continued. Those are things we're able to do online. We're able to continue developing partnerships and working with, businesses and industries, the Commerce Department, as Jeremiah mentioned. And so we're continuing to develop the programmatic aspects of that building. At this point, our original plan was to open up in fall of 2021. I think that's probably a little aggressive now, considering all that has happened. So we're probably looking at the spring or maybe fall of 2022. But I think by that time, the economy should be roaring. And the whole reason behind our budget presentation right now is we want to be prepared and prepare the current generation for the jobs that will open up. The worst thing we could do, the only thing we could do to make this crisis worse is to not have a generation of readily prepared, trained, and educated citizens to go when the economy opens up. So I think that's why we're here to, hopefully continue to get the support so that we can continue to develop both our programmatic aspects, our curriculum aspects, and all of those areas that we think will enhance the economy. Our auto tech program is one of the only ones in the region. So we know that's going to grow. And it's, auto tech is almost a misnomer. It's so much more sophisticated now than it ever has been in terms of the technologies that are embedded into cars. And in addition to the alternative fuels and some of the other attributes that go into auto technology. So we're very confident. We had meetings scheduled with SEPTA that literally ended on a dime because of the COVID. We hope to be able to soon restart those meetings. We're reaching out to the president of SEPTA, and I know that she's very much interested in working with us. So we're looking to line up these big companies, manufacturings that will view us as sole providers for training and educational opportunities for their staff.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Oh, I heard the bell, so I will just briefly ask this question. We know that 70% of the students at CCP, or more than 70% are students of color, and we know that the faculty representation is not the same. So could you talk about how you are supporting faculty from underrepresented groups around being hired at CCP and retention and increased recruitment from faculty from historically underrepresented groups? Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you for the latitude.
Thank you. And let me just note for the record, for the benefit of our colleagues, we have council members O, Sanchez, Bass, Green, and Thomas to get through. Unfortunately, we will not be able to do a second round for CCP. So when we continue with this round, if you have any additional questions, please forward them to the office of the council president. We will make sure we get them to CCP so that they can respond. But we have to get through both water and the airport. So thank you so much, Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson. And Dr. Generals, if you would just be able to briefly respond to Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson, that would be great, and we can move on to Councilman O.
Sure. So our faculty right now are 30%. That's our teaching as well as our support faculty. Our faculty include counseling and advising, which I think are equally important. So it's 30%. It has grown significantly in the last 5 years. Some of the strategies that we've employed, particularly as it relates to the contract settlements, include we've created a faculty fellow for recruiting and hiring minority faculty. We've created, it's called a diversity fellowship program, and its whole purpose is to enable faculty who are either adjuncts or they're interested in becoming a permanent faculty here to go through a year-long mentorship program whereby they will teach 3 classes each semester, and then ultimately they will be given an opportunity to be in the pool for final candidates for a permanent job. We've also, as part of the settlement, our diversity officer, and either she or he and or their designee will be a voting member of the committees. If you remember, the way faculty are hired, it emanates from the programs, the course, the discipline. So it's the English faculty or the history faculty. So we've been able to designate a voting member of those committees from our diversity committee, which we have, whose sole purpose is to advance the issues of diversity. All of our hiring committees must have diversity training. They must go through a diversity an extensive and intense diversity training program. And we've dedicated $15,000 per year to send faculty to conferences where diversity recruiting can be accomplished. In addition to that, we regularly advertise in a lot of the industry journals that cater to minority, Black, Brown, Asian American professors, and we've increased our budget to ensure that we do adequate advertising in those areas. So,
Dr. Generals, I'm sorry to have to interrupt you. We have 10 minutes, and we have to get through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more members and 2 more departments. So I'm just going to ask you if you have any additional response to Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson's question, you can just send it in writing.
Okay, sure.
Is that you got it, Councilwoman? We'll make sure we get it in writing for you, okay?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Generals.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilmember O.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll be brief and summarize. You could respond or respond in writing at another point in time. I'm just generally of the understanding that when community colleges were created, there was supposed to be theoretically, in the spirit of the law and written, that the state would provide 1/3, the city would provide 1/3, and that the students would provide no more than 1/3 the operating costs. The city would provide 50% of the community college's capital costs. And that has not been done. There has been a change in state law that the county, the city of Philadelphia, covers that portion. Where we are right now is that while I appreciate, the goals of the Cato Scholarship, my concern is that the students have been and are overcharged. My understanding in tuition, they should be paying 33 1/3%. Is that your understanding? If so, if not, how can we get to that 1/3 tuition? How can we reduce the tuition cost to all students, 26,000 students?
I think the origins or the historical origins to your premise is true, that was the original intent. I think, the complexities involved around your question about how we get to them I would respectfully ask that we give some time and send it to you in writing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Generals. I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember O. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to just reemphasize where you started, Councilwoman Parker, around the power up and the value and the importance of those programs. I too had an opportunity to spend some time with some of the participants and really saw the value in it, and I want to make sure that, for the record, that we continue to support that, and I was particularly pleased with Community College teaming up with FY2021 and others and doing a Spanish-only piece of it, so I appreciate that. In the poverty plan, we talked a lot around the important role the community college could play and the skills gap, expanded training for parents and adults, and not only using the school district's footprint, but expanding its footprint. So I was happy to hear your response to Councilwoman Gautier around the commitment to the West Fuller campus. What has, if anything, the administration talked to you about pivoting around some of this workforce development in light of the massive unemployment that we have in the city? If, again, you can submit your response in writing, but that would be key around how do we begin to prioritize and move from crisis to recovery and take people through that transition, because I want to see how this new investment supports some of those goals. And then during the discussion around dual enrollment, is that contingent on the Cato scholarship, or my understanding is that the dual enrollment funding is separate from that, or are they tied?
It's so we've done this enables us to expand it. So right now we are providing dual enrollment. If you count the middle college, it's probably about 800 students. The Cato scholarship will enable us to expand it considerably. So I would say, to use the term contingent, that's kind of a strong term. It's not contingent, but it certainly is helpful and will allow us to expand what is really a very successful program.
So we may ask you to separate the budget line items between the Cato and what is an expanded dual enrollment that meets some of the needs that Councilman Jones talked about. And then finally, this also came up as we looked at the expansion of community college. Your board representation, diversity, and appointment, the city council has been very active in supporting the increased role of community college. And I'd like to see us begin a conversation about how we ensure representation that council could either support or expand on the diversity of it. Can you speak to that?
So the board is appointed by the mayor. Right now, we have, the numbers are 8 African Americans, 6 Caucasian, and 1 Latina. I'd like to see more diverse or more balanced representation, especially as it relates to Latina and Asians. And I think we've been working towards that. We've had a number of vacancies, and we've talked with the administration about this, but it's a process. Those terms come up every 2 years, and it's a process that's pretty much run by the mayor's office, and that's determined by the city charter. So,
thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure, thank you, Council Lady. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass. Chair recognizes Councilmember Bass.
Yeah.
Maybe Councilmember Bass, we'll come back to her. Chair recognizes Councilman Green. Councilman Green?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Dr. Generals, your board chair, Mr. White. Thank you for opportunity.
Councilman Green, can you just for a second? Hello? If that is Councilman, can you hear us, Councilwoman? Councilwoman, we're going to ask that you just hang up and try to reconnect. Councilwoman, we're going to ask that you hang up and reconnect. Councilmember Green, I'm sorry, we'll go with you and we'll let Councilwoman Bass come back and reconnect with us. Councilmember Green.
Thank you. Dr. Generals, I have a couple quick questions. One, Community College of Philadelphia has been trying to provide training for those in the healthcare industries and trying to provide opportunities for those who could get an associate's degree or certificate as opposed to going to some of these for-profit fly-by-night entities. Considering that contact tracing is going to be a major issue as we come out of COVID-19, has there been any conversation, discussions within your current curriculum if you have the ability to provide any type of certificate program regarding contact tracing? That's question one. Question two, are any concerns in reference to reductions at the state level from a funding perspective? And then the third question is that you said earlier in your testimony that community college is not going to be having in-person classes in the fall, from my understanding. Is that based on your conversation with other community colleges around the Commonwealth? And what led to that decision?
So first, the contact tracing. We currently have a number of conversations going on. One with the Secretary of Economic Development through our continuing ed. We have a number of colleges across the Commonwealth who are interested in putting together a consortium of opportunities for students to provide this training. So we will, through our continuing ed division, will be submitting a proposal to him. But then secondly, we also, through our credit division, nursing students who have either community or clinical requirements. Our dean is looking to find ways to utilize their clinical requirements and or their community service as a basis for providing that contact training. So contact tracing. So she's been in contact with the Commissioner of Health here in the city of Philadelphia. They've said that it needs to be basically approved by the Department of Health. And so we're at the early stages with that as well. But we see a way where we can do that. We have a baccalaureate degree program for nursing, studying for the associate's degree. And we believe that will be a primary opportunity for those students who this summer have to provide a community service. So we may be able to do that sooner than later. And then the third, we're looking to find, so both of these are voluntary. We also are looking at where we might be able to find dollars, through some of the foundations around the city who might be willing to support this. So we're exploring that as well, but we haven't gotten there yet. So that was one. What was the second?
So the second question was in reference to funding at the state level, any concerns of any state cuts to the dollars that CCP receives. And then the third question was the decision to not have people on campus in the fall and whether other community colleges around the Commonwealth are doing the same.
So I meet with the other colleges on a regular basis, and they're kind of all over the place because some county are open and they're able to go back, or they're thinking about going back sooner than later. I mean, the driving decision behind our decision is the fact that we're still held in that red zone. And if you look at the numbers that transitioning to the yellow need to be, it doesn't even look like we're close to getting into the yellow yet. And in conjunction with what our faculty say they can do. So we've met with them. I would say that the decision is not based on a 14-member decision, but I have talked to them and we meet with them regularly, as I do with the Department of Education, Nori Ortega. We meet with him as well. It tells us what some of the guidelines are coming out of the state. And then finally was the funding, whether we're right now, you mean the state funding?
Correct.
Yeah. So right now, there's a preliminary budget, which was basically flat funding. The governor in the past, in the bewitching hour, has found more money before the July 1st deadline, and we're hoping that minimally he does that. But in addition to that, there are discretionary dollars that are intended to be, at least in part, dedicated to higher education. That would include the PASHE schools as well as the community colleges, so we're not exactly sure. He hasn't given any clue as to where he's going to commit those dollars. But right now, the only thing we know of, we've not heard, although I've heard whispers that there's a possibility of a cut because of the state's budget, but we haven't heard anything explicit or specific to that as of yet.
Thank you, Dr. Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. Councilwoman Bass is on. Councilwoman Bass, are you back with us?
I am back with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Generals, thank you so much for being here, for all the information that was provided today. And it's really been very informative. I just have a couple of questions for you. And one is the Hamilton. Can you talk very briefly about the Hamilton, which was developed by CCP? And as I understand it, most of the residents at the Hamilton, I think originally, was it supposed to be housing for CCP students or designed to attract CCP students? And now, for whatever reason, it has not turned out to be that way. Can you discuss that
No,
briefly for us?
the Hamilton has been, it's a public-private partnership. The college owns the land. RPG was the developer. They built the buildings. The only cost we had was soft cost, and we receive a lease from them, an annual lease on behalf of them. The primary reason was to provide an opportunity to recruit international students. We have always believed that we needed to find alternative or different revenue sources. And as of the beginning of the COVID, and probably right now, we had over 30 students who were international students living there. They double up and or they quadruple up in some cases. The second building is being built as we speak. And so the plan was, once again, that we would have an opportunity, and students, international, not exclusive to international students, so domestic students could also rent there, but it was the actual concept was to be able to recruit international students.
Okay, and I guess my question to that is that knowing that we have a significant population of young people who are college students who have gone through homelessness and who have also would probably be considered housing insecure, is that something that CCP is willing to revisit, or just in terms of future planning, is that something that CCP can look at in terms of it, the model that was originally developed for this project, and think more about the students who are currently at CCP, who are residents right here in Philadelphia, who are significantly housing insecure?
So, two-part answer to that question. We have been in conversations, and we have pretty much close to an agreement. All of this it didn't collapse, but it stopped with the COVID. An arrangement with the Philadelphia Housing Authority, whereby they would identify and dedicate houses to us in the neighborhood, and we would provide the renovation to those houses. We identified the first 3 houses, and we were able to come up with funding. I don't want to say contracted, but the third leg of this was managing those houses. So we worked with the city on finding a managing partner for those houses. So students would be able to, they would be dedicated to CCP students based on their need, and it would be in the neighborhood. And with 3 houses dedicated to that, we were up to close to, I believe the number was 20 students. The second piece to that is that we've been looking at and speaking with funders about the possibility of funding students in the Hamilton as well. But again, all those conversations came to a halt because of the COVID-19. I would say that the Hamilton, it is a private-public partnership, and we really we have no cost. It's not a dorm. We don't have to manage it. It's just available for our students. Our students get, they get an opportunity. Our students get an opportunity to stay there, but it's not exclusive to CCP students. So, given the fact that it's a public-private partnership, the owner of those buildings are RPG. But with that said, have approached a number of private fundraising foundation-type organizations to help students who want to go in there through private dollars that would be supported. But the primary means for dealing with the housing issue right now is the relationship we're building with the PHA.
Okay. As you're moving forward, I understand that the work that you've done in the neighborhood, but the neighborhood that CCP is in is not the same neighborhood that it was in ago. And, the neighborhood has changed. The neighborhood is significantly valued a whole lot higher in terms of being able to purchase properties in the neighborhood and be able to, slot students into those units. So I just ask you, as you're thinking about housing, that you give that some consideration. And can I ask one other very quick question, Madam Chair? A question. The Cato Scholarship is a last dollar scholarship, correct?
The Cato, that's correct.
Yes. Okay. And so you also have the 50th Anniversary Promise Scholarship, which is also a last dollar scholarship.
That's correct.
So you have 2 last dollar scholarships.
If you support this, we will. But the plan the current plan is that the Cato will only support full-time students. Previous to the Cato, that's what the 50th done. So it was kind of restrictive, and it only supported recent high school graduates. So if we get the Cato funding, we'll be able to extend the 50th to part-time students, returning students, and a large portion of our population that won't be covered by the Cato scholarship. So that's the current plan. We also have a scholarship as well.
It just sounds like a duplication of efforts, and I just wonder if maybe we could have just, renamed one of the scholarship funds so that we could have, we could have done all of this, and it just seems like we're duplicating efforts. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Bass, and thank you, Dr. Generals. Finally, we'll have Councilman Isaiah Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And good afternoon, Dr. Generals. Thank you to your team. Thank you for all the work that you've done. In the essence of time, I'm going to be very brief. I know that with the unfortunate COVID crisis that we're facing, that you've decided to delay the start of the Cato Scholarship to the spring of 2021. I'm wondering what was the thought process behind that? I think about the fact that a lot of young people tend to start school in the fall semester, not necessarily the spring semester. So I'm wondering, from a fiscal perspective, looking at the deficit that we face, would it be possible for the scholarship to start in the fall of 2021 instead of the spring of 2021? And from an operational perspective, what would that do to you and your team over there at CCP?
So, not really knowing whether we were going to be in full swing by the fall was one consideration. I know Rob is on I think he's on this call. Maybe Rob wants to jump in and answer some of the fiscal related questions to that. Or Jacob. I don't know if either one of you.
Yeah, I can cover that. We did look at the fiscal impact. We wanted to maintain the program. If you remember back in March when we originally proposed it, the contribution to CCP was going from 36 million to 54 million. We thought that with everything that we had to cut, we couldn't keep that level of increase, but we did think the program was important. So we looked at various options for how to keep the program as close as possible to what was originally proposed. And opening in the spring really was the best way to do that. And like Dr. General said, we also had some concerns about the logistics of being able to get the program up in the fall with everything that was going on with COVID-19.
So again, Dr. Generals, you know that I'm a supporter of CCP and I'm a supporter of the scholarship. But again, I'm wondering, not the fall of 2020. I'm saying the following year. Why didn't we not delay the start of the Cato Scholarship?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant so I misunderstood the question. I think we wanted to get it up and running. I think that the value that it adds and the capacity to both recruit and retain students was value that we wanted to be able to take, we wanted to be able to achieve. I think waiting a full year meant another generation of students who wouldn't have the advantage of going to a community college. One full year is half of the time it takes to get an associate's degree if you're going full time. So those students that would be ready this year, we're delaying it by a half. With our winter sessions and our summer sessions, hopefully we'll be able to catch many of the more aggressive ones up. We'll be able to catch them up, and hopefully by the fall of next year, 2021, they'll be on track to graduate in 2022. But we really wanted to, we think it's important enough that we felt that by the spring there would be enough organizational stability that we could provide a really good program and not waste another year.
Thank you, Councilmember Thomas. You have anything else you wanted to add, Councilmember Thomas?
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. No, I don't, but I do want to just go on the record and just voice my concern. I think that, again, as a person who supports the Cato Scholarship and as a person who look at education from a robust perspective, like I know a lot of us do, I just think that it would be a little more fiscally responsible if we had a conversation around starting that scholarship in the fall instead of this spring, which puts us in a position to generate even more revenue than the $4 million that you're essentially recommending for the particular scholarship component as it relates to the $8.8 million increase for CCP. Again, Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Generals, and thank you for all the great work you're doing over there at CCP.
Thank you.
Thank you to Dr. Generals, to Board Chair Jeremiah, and all of those from CCP in attendance. Thank you so very much. This will conclude the portion of our hearing relative to CCP. Council members, you'll know we have 2 more departments that we have to get through. We have to get through aviation, and we have to get through water. Again, Dr. Generals and Jeremiah, thank you so much for your presence. And I want to ask the clerk to please call the next witnesses scheduled to testify.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. So we have Shelley Cameron from Aviation and quickly followed by Commissioner Randy Heyman from Water.
Thank you so much. We're going to say good afternoon to you. And are each of you connected and ready to proceed? I just want to hear your voices so that we know that there are no technical challenges.
Yes, I'm connected.
Okay, all right, thank you. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. And also for the record, I know this will be just a little different. We're going to hear testimony from both aviation and water first, and then we will have questions. So we'll hear both departments first, and then we'll have questions. So please feel free to proceed with your testimony and state your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Parker and members of City Council. I'm the CEO of the City of Philadelphia's Division of Aviation, and we are responsible for operating and maintaining Philadelphia International Airport and the Northeast Philadelphia Airport. My direct reports and other members of our senior leadership team are on with me today and will be available to answer questions. I'm going to limit my comments during this portion to the impacts of COVID-19 on the airport. And then we can get into anything that you would like during the questions. Dealing with the current crisis has been very challenging. We have enhanced the cleaning techniques in our terminals and other high-touch areas. We've implemented motion sensor technology to reduce the number of touch points our passengers encounter at our facility. Half of our security checkpoints are temporarily closed, and we are not currently charging passengers or employees for on-site parking. Through these troubling times, our employees, union, non-represented, and exempt, have remained committed to the safety of our passengers, and nothing has brought me more sleepless nights than worrying about their safety. Prior to the onset of COVID-19, we had more than 21,000 division and tenant employees. Now we have a much smaller group of on-site essential employees who are doing tremendous work keeping the lights on and making sure passengers are safe and comfortable. However, with passenger traffic at less than 10% of where it was this time a year ago, our biggest challenges going forward will be to reassure travelers that it is safe to use our airport and to remain financially solvent into the future. Speaking bluntly, revenue is non-existent at this point. As you know, the division is an enterprise fund of the city, and its revenue is mostly made up of airline and non-airline sources. To illustrate, landing fees, an airline revenue source, rely on aircraft operations. Concession revenue is a non-airline revenue source, which relies on rent and sales of food and retail products to passengers, and so on. As a result of not having passengers like before, we are now raising only a small fraction of the revenue we are accustomed to seeing. We are coordinating with our airline partners to understand their forward-looking flight schedules and estimated passenger levels. And when compared to fiscal year 2019 levels, we currently project fiscal year 20 passengers to be down by 27% and fiscal year 21 passengers to be down by 53%. These estimates are evolving each week as the airlines continue to react to the reality of COVID. And if these flight and passenger levels hold or get worse, we will need to scale down our operation to meet the new demand. This unfortunately means we will have to make additional difficult decisions, leading to further budget reductions, including layoffs. These aren't decisions that we are going to make without thoughtful consideration, and they are dependent on several factors, including further relief from Washington or Harrisburg. Speaking of relief, as you may remember, PHL and PNE were awarded $116 million at the end of March as part of the CARES Act. While this funding is appreciated, it only covers roughly 4 months of operating costs for the airports. We are continuing to engage Congress as well as the Commonwealth for additional relief, but it is unclear at this time if we can expect anything in the near term. Any support this body can give in encouraging members of the General Assembly and Congress to prioritize funding for us would be greatly appreciated. Lastly, I want to address that while revenue has ground to a halt, we have been financially supporting our tenants, including our concessionaires and airlines, through fee deferrals and other waivers. This unfortunately has not prevented a loss of jobs, as many of our tenants and subcontractors have suffered layoffs. The division is committed to continuing to work with our tenants, but unfortunately, we are preparing for the fact that many of them may not survive, leading to additional long-term revenue challenges. I welcome all of your questions, but I hope you can understand that we are still in the thick of this and are attempting to understand what the short and long-term damage will be to the travel industry and the division. It's difficult to be on such uncertain footing, but I appreciate the willingness of this body to listen to our challenges and support efforts that will help the airport, our tenants, the many employees on site, and this community. Thank you, Councilmember Parker. That concludes my testimony.
Thank you. We're going to ask the Water Department officials who are present to please state their names for the record. They will again testify so that when members are asking their questions, they can address their questions to either Aviation or the Water Department. And in essence, you'll be splitting your 5 minutes between the two of them. And I've just been sent a note that we have a hard stop time because we are being televised at 5 o'clock. So Water Department, please feel free to proceed.
Yes, good afternoon. This is Randy Heyman, Water Commissioner. As I mentioned, I'm Randy Heyman, Water Commissioner, Philadelphia Water Department. With me today, among other members of our team, are Donna Schwartz, our Deputy Commissioner of Operations, and Melissa Labuda, our Deputy of Finance. Thank you for this opportunity to appear before you today to provide testimony regarding PWD's fiscal year 2021 operating budget. Philadelphia Water Department primary mission is to protect the health and safety of our residents and our region. We meet that daily mission by planning for, operating, and maintaining the infrastructure and organization needed to reliably provide the uninterrupted supply of high-quality drinking water for household, commercial, and firefighting needs, and sustaining and enhancing the region's watersheds and quality of life by treating wastewater to high standards and effectively managing stormwater. With that said, I'd like to begin by highlighting the several key initiatives that the Water Department has prioritized and continued over the past year, as our team of more than 2,200 dedicated employees work every day to uphold its vital commitment to our customers. PWG recently updated some very important customer service initiatives in collaboration with our key partners. To begin with, in close partnership with the Water Revenue Bureau and OIT, and with key feedback from members of the council, we have worked diligently to continuously improve and refine the Tiered Assistance Program, TAP, from working on enhancing internal communications and customer communications, and to making it easier to apply and re-enroll in. We remain committed to making this important service readily accessible to low-income customers. These efforts have resulted in new and more detailed letters, which are designed to be more targeted and provide more detailed TAP information to customers, including associated customer responsibilities for the program. Additional efforts have been made to improve the customer's application process by providing an enhanced range of options for requesting and completing TAP applications. We also have made changes to the arrearage that the individuals have in the TAP program And we have the forgiveness of arrearage. The forgiveness of the water bill debt by erasing debt over 24 months of timely bill payments. To date, there are approximately 40,000 customers benefiting from our income-based water billing assistance programs. On April 1st, we also marked the first full year of our tiered help or homeowners emergency loan program. The program offers TAP customers who may need a more manageable help loan repayment option, the ability to extend their 5-year zero-interest loan repayment terms to as long as 15 years interest-free. Additionally, PWD increased our focus on the city's senior citizens population in fiscal year 20. PWD and the Water Revenue Bureau began a mailing campaign in 2019 to reach out to more than 24,000 customers currently enrolled in the Senior Citizen Discount Program who had not applied through the streamlined TAP assistance application. The campaign encouraged customers to apply for assistance through the Uniform Customer Assistance Program application process, since TAP may provide them with a lower water bill. PWD also partnered with peer utilities to host a series of utility fairs around the city. In addition to our department organizations such as Philadelphia Gas Works, PECO, Energy Utility Emergency Service Fund, Department of Revenue, Ben Philly, and Catholic Social Services put on these events, which each saw customer participation ranging from 60 to 150 attendees. In addition to customer assistance efforts, PWD is serving our ratepayers in the city through our commitment to continuous improvement in customer service and services in the region at large. And quickly, I'll list for you that we've had improvements with AMI. Our ongoing work in implementing the advanced metering infrastructure AMI system will deliver enhanced customer service capabilities, give customers early warning of water leaks to help mitigate unnecessary high bills, and support increased operational efficiencies for uninterrupted services to our more than 1.6 million customers. In our recently merged WRB PWD Customer Service Contact Center, PWD has been and will continue to be delivering comprehensive cross-training for representatives who include both technical skills in billing and work order databases and soft skills for providing high-quality customer experiences. These efforts benefit not only our customers, but provide our representatives with professional development opportunities that can help them ultimately advance their careers. Demonstrating their incredible dedication to our core services, our PWD teams and operations repaired approximately 520 water main breaks this fiscal year. And our call center has reduced response time to emergency calls from 3.4 minutes to 2.25 minutes as Q1 fiscal year 20. Another key factor of ours is ensuring awareness of PWD's deep commitment to water quality. As part of consistently reliably providing drinking water of the highest standard, our 3 drinking water plants continue their compliance with the Partnership for Safe Water. Our Northeast and Southwest water pollution control plants also earned platinum awards from the National Association of Clean Water Agencies. That's the highest award you can receive. And our Southeast plant earned a silver award. Moreover, PWD continues to meet its yearly targets for Clean Water Act compliance, having greened nearly 1,500 acres of the city as of December 31st. To safeguard financial resiliency and maintain existing credit ratings, PWD also continues to sustain a balanced 5-year fiscal plan and ensure timely administration of operating and capital budgets, PWD invoicing, and all financing reporting. Finally, I'm very pleased to share that fiscal year 19 PWD exceeded its 30% participation goal, achieving a 33% minority, women, or disabled person-owned participation rate on our contracts. This translates to $71 million in business being awarded to minority, women, and disabled owner-owned enterprises during this period. It is our hope that our continued support of PowerPoint and high school apprenticeship programs will also contribute to a diverse pipeline of future PWD contractors and employees. I want to mention that we put a very high importance on diversity and on diversity efforts within the four walls of the building. And as I just mentioned, as we stretch out into the community as far as the contractors that we hire. We look to pull from the spectrum.
Excuse me for interjecting, Mr. Heyman. Let me just state for the record that as we started, which was why we heard the testimony from both departments prior to questions, was because we had a hard stop time at 5 p.m. on Channel 64. However, we have been informed that we will go past 5 p.m. and our hearings will still be televised. And so as Mr. Heyman wraps up and summarizes his testimony, I just want to ensure all members of council that each and every one of you who are in queue now, we will have the time to ensure that we can get through our 5-minute round. So I don't want you to think that it's 4:30, only a half an hour, we won't be able to get through with it. Channel 64 has given us the okay. And I apologize, Randy Heyman, for interjecting here. I needed to do that, but please feel free, to finish summarizing your testimony. We'll get to questions.
Thank you very much. To continue to meet our vital service goals, regulatory mandates, which also give the through consideration of unique financial constraints presented by the COVID-19 pandemic, the department revised its fiscal year 21 budget and reduced its original ask by $25.5 million. This funding will allow us to continue to meet our essential charge of providing the water, wastewater, and stormwater services that help preserve the health of the Philadelphia public, particularly at this critical time. In closing, I'd like to thank the department's workforce, whose efforts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to keep the water running, the sewers clear, and our waterways clean, all support quality of life for everyone who lives and works and visits the Philadelphia region. This concludes my testimony. Thank you again for your time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you both so very much for your testimony. And again, to you, Randy Heyman, thank you so very much for understanding the need that we needed to just interject and communicate that information. So I appreciate that. I just want to start with two very quick questions. And this is for the airport. I recently read in a blog post, and you'll correct me if this isn't applicable to Philadelphia, on the International Airport Review. And it said that airports that specialize in cargo have actually been, quote unquote, winners during this pandemic because of the current lack of sea freight capacity and then the booming e-commerce trade. When I saw that, I said to myself, what is the percentage of flights in and out of Philadelphia airports that are cargo flights versus those that are passenger flights? Can you give me a number for both of those?
Yes, Councilmember Parker, thank you so much for hitting one of the bright spots of what's happening at the airport. I'm going to turn to my Chief Revenue Officer, Jim Tyrell, to give you those answers.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Parker. My name is Jim Tyrell. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Philadelphia International Airport. Cargo is a bright spot here at the airport, and Philadelphia just happens to be positioned in one of the most strategic areas of the United States, whereby the area around Philadelphia has a $53 billion annual cargo market. Today, American Airlines is not flying international passenger flights, but they are flying cargo flights. They fly weekly flights in and out of the airport, as well as British Airways and a Portuguese airline called Highfly, who is flying cargo in and out of Philadelphia to China. We are very focused on the cargo market, and we think that our future is going to be helped tremendously by cargo activity.
Thank you, Jim. And listen, help me here. Do you have a number? If you don't have it now, just tell me. But I want to know, do we have a percentage of the number of flights that are cargo in Philadelphia and those that are passenger, so that we can just get a snapshot of what it looks like?
I don't
Cargo activity. Go ahead, Shel.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that the numbers are changing because cargo is growing and everything else is shrinking. And so I don't have a number off the top of my head. We will provide that to you in writing.
Thank you. And the Council President's Office will ensure that it's distributed to all members of Council. Next, I have a question in regards to, because of this time, are we able to use this as an opportunity for deferred maintenance work? Very early on, when we were talking about the area of construction, the need to get zoning, L&I, to get permits, CCP even talked about it, because we need every opportunity we can to have people contributing into our tax base. So is the airport able to use this time to get any deferred maintenance work done? For example, I would imagine that you're in a good position where you could probably close a runway or two if you need to, or even a terminal if necessary, to get some construction work done. But we need some people working to contribute to this tax base. What's that looking like?
That's a great question. We are taking this opportunity to do some essential work, but not nearly as much as we would like to. It's similar to the answer that you heard this morning. The more construction work that we do, capital projects that we do, the more borrowing we will have to take on, and that debt service will hit our rate base. And because we are unsure of how things are going to go for the next couple of years, we're being very cautious about making sure that we're not overspending. We are doing some taxiway work. We're rebuilding the runway at the Northeast Airport. We're continuing with some elevator work. We did some escalator replacements. So there is activity happening. It's just not quite as much as what you might think. What we are able to do, though, is a lot of deferred maintenance with our in-house work team. Because the passengers aren't here, now they're limited to A and B teams in many cases, so that we're able to enforce physical distancing and keep them safe. But when they are here without the passengers, they are taking the opportunity to do certain projects within the terminal complex.
Thank you. Finally, in closing, and if you don't have the answer to this right now, just forward the information. My question is in regards to all of the subcontracting agencies who are, they're fortunate because they benefit from doing business at the airport. And how is that relationship with their workers? Or are you able to provide for us, to every subcontractor you have, how many have laid employees off? If their industry, the industry sees a rebound, what's the plan for bringing those who've been laid off back to work? Is there a process and or a schedule? We've been hearing from a lot of airport workers who are obviously out of work right now, and we just want to know what has been the plan and how has the airport's inactivity impacted their ability to work. Again, you don't have to give me that answer now. Slew of council members waiting, but please provide that to us in writing so that we can get a snapshot of those numbers coming directly from you and not what we have to get third party from someone else.
Well, we don't have a lot of that information, but we will share with you what we do have and provide it in writing.
And we would ask that you ask the people who do business at the airport, because whether or not you may not have it now, but they work for you and they're subcontractors with the airport. So we would ask if they have that information available, if they could provide it to you, if you could ask that of them. Next person that's in queue is Councilmember Maria Quinones Sanchez, and then following her will be Councilmember Dom.
Thank you. This first question is for the airport. What, if anything, you see happening? We have a lot of business flights, right? A lot of it, 12, 15 flights to Boston. How do you see that market changing? And how long do you think your recovery is going to take? What is the conversation about how that looks?
So that's a really good question. I think what you're going to see first and foremost is the loss of frequencies to a lot of those business markets. What we hope is that we don't lose competition, because as we've talked about many times, having more than one airline provide service to a location like Boston is ultimately what determines the cost of the tickets. So we're hoping that we won't lose the competition altogether, but we definitely believe that you'll see a loss of frequency. I can also talk about what we know right now. Domestic destinations that we know that we've lost are Chattanooga, Houston Hobby, the new seasonal flight to Bozeman, that's in the domestic side. International, Berlin and Bologna have been canceled in 2020. And Bologna was actually canceled prior to COVID-19 because of performance. And the summer seasonal flight that we were so looking forward to Casablanca, has been postponed indefinitely. There are a number of international flights that will not be operating this summer. American was planning to do service to Reykjavik, as well as they've also for a long time had service to Barcelona, Prague, Edinburgh, Shannon, Budapest, Athens, Dubrovnik, Venice, and Lisbon. We hope that will come back in the summer of 21.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to assume we're going to get a second round with the Water Commissioner. I have several for him, but I want to honor my colleagues who are in line. So we're going to do them one at a time or both? You're on mute.
Councilwoman, you should ask all of your questions now. And because we've been given the leeway to go, but since we had both of them to testify, we want members to ask their questions of both airport along with water.
Thank you. I have some other questions for the airport. I'll submit them. They're not time sensitive. I just really want to thank all of you for adjusting to this reality. And I know your industry more than, just like the hospitality industry, has been hit hard. So thank you so much to the airport folks for their work. For the Water Commissioner, this is your first time testifying, so welcome, welcome, welcome. I was happy to hear your TAP numbers. You know how important this stuff is to me, and really want to thank you for working with us for the forgiveness program. Can you speak to the recertification of folks who were taken off the program and how that's going? And I noticed there's a reduction in some of your outreach team. Given the fact that we're going to need to ramp up our enrollment figures, how do you think that's going to impact our ability to reach, when we first started this program, we said 60,000 Philadelphians were eligible. Given COVID-19, I imagine that number has gotten higher. How are we going to make sure we're in line with our enrollment numbers?
Okay. On the recertification, I'm going to ask our Deputy Commissioner of Finance, Melissa Labuda, to answer that question.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman. Thank you for holding these sessions today. The department and the Revenue Department is working diligently, and I asked my colleague Michelle Bethel Nola to please jump in if I go astray. Where the two departments are working diligently on ensuring we reach all eligible customers. Customers in our affordable programs actually totals 40,000. We have 24,000 senior citizens in a senior citizen discount program and approximately 16,000 customers in a program called TAP. So we are reaching customers. And your question on ramping up is we'll work diligently to fill vacancies and do the best that we can to reach everyone that needs assistance in this time of incredible financial stress.
So of the 274 that were decertified, we don't know how many were enrolled. And then the second question is, what, if anything, are we doing to delay so that we're not doing this for recertification and we don't find ourselves taking people off in an affordability plan during the crisis and then through the recovery?
Well, I think it's fair to say, as we move forward, we'll evaluate where we are. And we'll see what the effect of COVID-19 is for the administrative side of what we need to do, and then we will make adjustments accordingly. So basically, as we go forward, we're going to have to analyze where we are, how successful we are in meeting our goals, and then to turn around and adjust if need be.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to honor everybody else's time.
Thank you, Councilwoman Sanchez. Chair recognizes Councilmember Dom.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to both of you. I have just two quick questions for the airport. And the Councilwoman Sanchez is absolutely right. Hospitality is getting destroyed in this pandemic, and you're part of that. You mentioned that your revenue could be down 50%, I believe, and the following year. What's your capacity to cover that shortfall?
I'm going to turn to our Chief Financial Officer, but in a nutshell, we are going to have to reduce expenses to a large part to be able to cover that shortfall. A lot of it is going to depend on the size of the facility that we're actively operating. If, for example, the airlines draw down flights and we don't need to use all of the terminals, then we'll be able to temporarily close terminals, and that will, allow us to draw down expenses even more. And we do have, luckily, the bridge of the CARES Act funding, the $116 million that it can be applied to multiple fiscal years. So that will help us not just in this fiscal year, but moving forward as well. So Tracy, if you want to jump in with anything else.
Yes, I'm here. Participant is now joining.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Dom. My name is Tracy Ford. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Philadelphia International Airport and Philadelphia Northeast Airports. Shelley really hit the nail on the head with her answers. We have been fortunate to receive the CARES Act grant, which is allowing us to sustain ourselves during this time of little to no revenue coming in. And we will be utilizing that CARES Act grant immediately and through the next 2 fiscal years, spreading that out to help us make our payments. In addition to the CARES Act grant, as Shelley mentioned, we will continue to monitor how things progress with the hospitality industry and the airline industry here. And we will see how things are going and reduce expenditures accordingly. Beyond that, I think you understand the way our airport works is to make up the needs of what we have here, even with reduced expenditures, we do turn to our airline partners. So we would increase the rates that we charge to the airlines to make up any difference or any shortfall.
Okay, thank you very much. I just have a question then to the Water Department. Similar question. I'm sure this economic impact is going to affect all of us, but if for some reason the impact at the Water Department fund would have tremendous shortfalls, how would the Water Department go about handling those shortfalls?
Well, as you know, one option would be to look at the rate structure we have and see if there's a need for any type of adjustment to the rate. One option. Another way that we obtain funds is through bonds. So those would probably be the two quickest ways and most efficient ways for us to evaluate where we are. If there was a shortfall, how do you fill it? One way would be to raise the rate. The other would be to find the use of bonds if necessary.
Okay. Just a quick question. I'm going to estimate you're going to see an increase.
I meant to also say that we're also talking and very active with national organizations like NACWA, National Association of Clean Water Agency. They're shooting to try to get federal funds, to get money from the state revolving funds, more grants than loans, to give us more flexibility and ability to meet our mandate. So that's the third option that we're trying to receive funds. I'm sorry, thank you.
That's okay. The rates for commercial water versus residential water, similar or different?
I'll ask our finance director to look at that question.
Good afternoon. The rate structure is declining block, so it is similar. It's a volumetric measurement on how much water you use, and it declines the more you use, whether you have a 5/8-inch meter, which is a typical residential account, or something larger.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Dom. Chair recognizes Councilmember Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to everyone. First question actually goes to both aviation and water. If you could provide this information to the chair. What is the breakdown of the professionals you'll be using for new money in reference to bonds you'll be issuing this year? And if you can break down the timeline you anticipate issuing those bond opportunities. And especially I want to see what type of minority professionals you're using for bond counsel, as well as FAs, as well as investment bankers. For aviation, I have a couple questions. I'll ask aviation question first, and then water, and then wait to hear your responses. For the airport, what's the current status on the homelessness issue that's been going on at the airport, especially since COVID-19? What is the status of the use and lease negotiations with the various airline carriers? 3, do you anticipate any new gates at the airport? And 4, considering that airport passengers travel is significantly down because of COVID-19. What process are you using for sanitation? I know SEPTA had a sanitation proposal done some weeks ago, and I want to know what you're doing in that regard. Regarding water, as chair of the Gas Commission, I have a question in reference to the AMI rollout, and if there will be any type of coordination of that AMI rollout at the Water Department along with PGW.
Okay, I can go first and try to very quickly provide some of the answers, and we'll just provide additional detail in writing. So we are planning a bond deal for later this year, we hope, provided that the markets are open to airport credits. There's only been one airport deal that's gone through since COVID hit, and it was a AA credit, and we are a single A credit. And so Tracy will provide more details for you in writing, if that's okay. But we are planning a bond deal for later this year. Regarding, I'm going to do a couple quick ones, and then I'll end with the homeless situation. So the use and lease agreement, we conferred with the airlines after the COVID-19 crisis hit, and we mutually agreed to extend the date by which we could exercise the one-year option that was called for in the use and lease agreement that we have right now. And so we mutually agreed to extend the agreement by 1 year to help get us through the crisis. So again, that was something that was contemplated in the original agreement, and we came together and decided that that was a smart way to look at it. New gates, not anytime soon. We're going to be lucky. Let me just put it this way. We are uncertain as to how many flights we're going to really have moving forward out of the airport. And if anything, I would anticipate that we would need fewer gates than what we have today, rather than additional gates, which is quite frankly where we were a year ago. Sanitation, we will provide that answer in writing. We are using some agents and cleaning products that have been certified so that we can be sure that health and safety come first for the passengers and the employees. And so we'll provide you all of those details in writing. And then I'll just end with the unsheltered population that we have at the airport. This is a little bit of a longer answer. So I've been talking a lot about health and safety, and the health and safety of our Division of Aviation employees, as well as the other stakeholder employees, the 21,000 people who work here, as well as the small number of passengers who've been traveling through the airport is really top of mind. As the COVID crisis unfolded, we found that we had more and more of the unsheltered population coming to the airport. And we were receiving concerns on a daily basis from our employees, as well as many other employees who work at the airport. They were concerned about sanitation. We were finding it very difficult to get in and to do deep cleanings of the areas where they were sheltering. And so at the end of March, we put into place an emergency regulation that essentially prohibited the facilities from anybody who didn't have a business purpose, a ticketed passenger, an employee, someone with explicit business. And we allowed the homeless population to shelter in the Terminal A East baggage claim area. That baggage claim area was unused because the flights that were using that terminal were gone. It's an international terminal. We only have one international flight right now, by the way, to Cancun. Everything else is canceled. And so we allowed the unsheltered population to take shelter there. We are not the best location for that population. We have no services. There's no food. There's no place for them to really be. And as the population started to grow, as COVID continued, we found that we couldn't even really safely allow the population to continue to shelter in Terminal A East baggage claim area. They couldn't maintain the physical distancing. So that population grew to well over 200. We had about 30 when we started. We, at one point, had almost 250, and we still have almost 200 on a daily basis. Our employees, our custodians in particular, those are city employees, the ones who keep the airport clean. We outfitted them with full body PPE to keep them safe. They go in and they clean the facilities multiple times a day. But again, there, along with the growing population, came a part of the population that was more predatory in nature. And so we've experienced a lot of damage to the facility. I could go on and on. And so what we did this past weekend was we instituted another emergency regulation, really a revision to it, where ultimately, and by the way, we've been working very closely with the Office of Homeless Services, Behavioral Health, and all of the other city agencies that are focused on this issue. And they've been fantastic in helping us to figure out a solution. They will be here on site later this week to help transport and provide services to this unsheltered population. After that day, we believe it's going to be Friday of this week, we will start enforcing folks who don't have a business purpose from being in any of our buildings. That includes meeters and greeters. So folks who would normally come up and meet somebody arriving from a flight or dropping somebody off will no longer be allowed to enter the terminal building throughout this crisis, so that we can really, again, where I started, maintain health and safety for our employees, for the employees of the other stakeholders at the airport, and so we can get into the facility and do a deep cleaning. One last note, this schedule, the reason it's happening now is that we need an opportunity to go into the AE's baggage claim area in particular and do tens of thousands of dollars worth of repairs, because we do understand that there may be some flights starting in early June, and we need an opportunity to be able to go in there and fix the facility so that it's ready for passengers and stakeholder employees.
Councilman Green? We can't hear you, Councilman Green. You're on mute.
Yeah, if Commissioner Hayman can also answer my question. Thank you, Ms. Cameron.
Yes, in regards to your questions regarding the bonds and minority professionals, I want to reiterate that we are at Philadelphia Water dedicated, committed to diversity, and that we have inclusion in that area of our needs, and we'll supply a more detailed answer to you shortly in writing. On your question with AMI, I'm glad to report that I have already met with PGW, and that we have already had preliminary talks about sharing the network so that we can work cohesively in this process. We do not want to inconvenience our customers, and logistically we want to be able to work as efficiently as we can together, and so we're sharing information, and as I noted, we've already had some preliminary talks about sharing the network.
Thank you, Commissioner and Councilmember Green. Any additional follow-up, please feel free to send it on to the Council President's office, and he'll make sure it's distributed to all members of Council in response to Councilman Green's questions. The Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gaultier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My first questions are for the airport. How will COVID-19 impact the airport's ability to undertake climate adaptation and the climate adaptation and resiliency plan that is scheduled for this coming year?
So we're going to be challenged for this coming year. We've already accomplished a number of things, but this coming year, because we are so revenue challenged, additional expenditures are going to be very challenging for us. We do have a lot of information that we can provide to you on things that we're doing, that we've done in the past and that we will plan to do that are low cost. And if that's okay, we'll just provide that to you in writing.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you talk about the process that you'll use to decide which full-time aviation positions are being cut and how the process will account for equity and inclusion?
Sure. I'm going to ask my Chief Administrative Officer, Soledad Alfaro, to address that.
Good afternoon. My name is Soledad Alfaro. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the Philadelphia International Airport and the Philadelphia Northeast Airport. So for full-time employees that are civil service employees, which is the majority of our workforce, only about 4% of our workforce are exempt, there's a process that the city mandates. So it's prescriptive, it's an algorithm, and that will determine our layoffs for our full-time employees.
And we will, I'll just add to that, that we're going to very carefully consider function, size of facility. The CARES Act gave us a little bit more time than the rest of the city to really dig in and understand what the best way to address the budget shortfalls would be. And if we have to do layoffs, we'll be able to do it very mindfully to make sure that we can still complete the mission and lay off as few people as possible.
Okay, great. It'd be great for council to hear more about what the layoffs look like as you move ahead and what the demographics look like as well.
Of course.
All right. My next questions are for Commissioner Hayman. I wanted to go back to the TAP program. We were talking about the 60,000 who were eligible for the program versus the amount currently enrolled. I wanted to know if we thought about automatic enrollment.
Is there a security trick of the 150 plus?
I know the, sorry.
Excuse me, Councilmember Jones, mute yourself. Thank you, Councilmember. I apologize, Councilwoman Gauthier. Please continue.
That's okay. Going back to the TAP program and thinking about the 60,000 people eligible versus the amount of people currently enrolled, I wanted to know if we had thought about automatic enrollment. I know that our Poverty Action Plan talked about the idea of automatic enrollment for benefit programs where possible, and TAP seems like a great candidate for that type of thing. So I wanted you to speak to that.
Well, I would say all options that will improve the program, that will make it more efficient, are on the table. We're looking at that possibility, and I'll be glad to report back to you later if we're able to go in that direction.
Okay, great. My next question is about Green City Clean Waters. The Water Department has estimated the lifetime cost projections of Green City Clean Waters to be $4.5 billion, with $3.5 billion from the capital budget and $1 billion in operations and maintenance. So I wanted to hear more about how you're determining those projections, what areas of spending are highest, and what the agency is doing to lower those costs.
Okay. Well, one of the main things we have to do is, one, evaluate what is the need of the project, make sure that we're pricing it correctly and have a very competitive process in what work needs to be done, that we are very strategic in cutting out areas that are not required in the project, and that we meet our timetables in going forward with those specific projects. So all of that comes together to us trying to lower the rates as best we can. I would also like our Finance Deputy Commissioner to add on any of the financial details if he wishes to.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayman. The costing was formulated based on actual experience. So the capital costs were based on approximately $330,000 for Green Acre, and the maintenance costs were based on actual maintenance experience to maintain a Green Acre. Those costs have not trended down, so that $4.5 billion you mentioned remains in place today.
I also wanted to hear, with respect to Green City Clean Waters, if the Water Department had utilized or conducted any research that looks at more of the triple bottom line benefits provided by the program in assessing the full cost and benefits.
Ms. Labuda, have we in the finance area, you can share what you found.
So when I think of triple bottom line, I think of people, planet, and profit. So when we're looking at a program that is more than double its original cost, we, of course, are evaluating all of our options. We are talking about in a program that is significantly more expensive than what we originally projected. And as Commissioner Heyman has discussed, we have to evaluate all options, including what it does to our rate base.
Great. Is the water department also, in addition to the cost, are you looking at some of the benefits that the program has for neighborhoods and for small businesses and for green jobs as well? Is that a part of the consideration, as well as the benefit to the environment?
Absolutely, absolutely. I was the general counsel in Washington, D.C. Water, when they brought that in. We had to bring in a training, green jobs training. So that was one aspect of it. So I'm very sensitive to the triple bottom line, the benefits, the job benefits that are associated with it firsthand. And so, yes, we are concerned with that. We are focused on that. And we're doing our best to gather data that allow us to evaluate what the triple bottom line would be.
It'd be great to hear more about your thinking on that as we move along. Thank you.
I would be glad to.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gaultier. Chair recognizes Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Sorry about my mic.
All
My priorities were right. It was 5 o'clock and it was time for dinner. So.
Bring me some.
Okay. Couple of questions, and both of them are related. Well, number one, Commissioner, again, welcome to city government. I'm sorry your first budget experiences under COVID-19, but way to get baptized. Question. I saw a news report that there were testings being done through the wastewater of some communities to determine to what degree COVID had impacted those communities. Is that, did you hear that, and is Philadelphia doing it that way as well?
Yes, that is true. And it's been done with other pathogens in society where they've been able to look at the wastewater and they can almost pinpoint it down to a house by evaluating the numbers and making a smaller set. And so we have been contacted. We are working with universities. I believe Temple is one. There's part of this group of universities looking at COVID in the wastewater. And from that, you can make a determination of how many people actually have received testing positive for COVID, would test positive for COVID or have contracted the illness. And we're also willing to work with the health department in any way that we can. We're all one city. We're more than happy to help in trying to fight this battle.
So I would, in normal circumstances, pre-COVID, I would say that would be invasive and what you're going to use that information for and all of the conspiracy theories associated with it. Today, I don't. When in week 1 of COVID, we used to have people that would come out and do tracing of people's contact with someone with COVID. By week 7, the numbers were so massive, they could no longer do that. Mm-hmm. So if there was a new technology, a new way to isolate maybe a nursing home or something like that to kind of get us treating it that way, then I am for that. So I just wanted to find out if that was true and if we were participating. And you said you are working with the health department to deal with that.
Yes, we were contacted. There was from some of the universities and also, I believe, from the health department, and we're more than willing to work with them as they move forward.
Got it. My next question, Madam Chair, is for the Director of Aviation. And as she unmutes her mic, I guess I could ask the question, of the 150 or so homeless people that are inhabiting our airport, does that constitute a security risk by way of, have they been screened? Have they been looked at for, I know back in the not so good old days, the only thing we would worry about was terrorists. And are they being screened, and how are you preventing them from becoming a security risk?
So, Councilmember Jones, that's a good question, and I think it goes back to what I said a couple minutes ago, which is we just don't have the facilities or the services at the airport to deal with the population. And so ultimately moving them to places that have those kinds of services will be in their best interest as well as our employees' best interest. Regarding the security of the facility, I mentioned that there was a predatory piece of the population, small, but criminal element, destructive. We've had folks, really trying to push limits. And so that is a physical security risk to the airport. We've taken on some additional security guards, some contracted security guards to actually escort our custodians into the areas where they're staying to make sure that there's no trouble while our employees are there, as well as to kind of maintain and help supplement the police while the situation is ongoing. By the end of the week, hopefully the majority of these folks will accept shelter with the city at one of their locations, and hopefully we'll be able to get them the services they need and get back in and repair our facility and get it ready for passengers.
So a couple of weeks ago when the airlines were ramping back up, they had these strict, we are going to take care of things both by way of disinfectants and cleanings and social distancing on the airlines. We are besieged by numbers of photos where people aren't respecting that social distancing while flying on airlines, and those airlines are landing in our airports. Have you begun discussions with airlines about maintaining that policy of the middle seat being vacated?
What we have done is started some recovery and ongoing crisis meetings with all of our partner airlines. And we are in the process of inventorying all of their processes and procedures to make sure that we are aware of what they're all doing. A number of them have put up plexiglass shields to protect passengers and ticket counter agents. We're actually putting together and trying to document everything that they're all doing. In fact, American Airlines and Southwest last Monday, a week ago today, started requiring all of their passengers to wear face masks on board. And I can tell you that now all of the airlines that serve the airport require masks while on board. Again, we can provide more information in writing, but we are working with them to make sure that we understand what they're doing to protect really our passengers too.
Can you provide that to the chair? Because as we go forward, we're going to evaluate all of what we've learned from this pandemic and all of the good neighbors, and then those neighbors that weren't so good that need incentives to be better.
We can provide you documentation from the meetings and the inventory that we've taken. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you,
Madam Chair, if I may say quickly to Councilman Jones, staff just told me that the health department and Temple are working together, and sampling will begin this week, is my understanding, as far as the COVID existing in wastewater and some of the medical reviews that we discussed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Councilman Jones, for those questions. Listen, we're trying to see if we can make that hard stop at 5:30. We have 3 council members, Brooks, Gim, and Gilmore Richardson. Councilwoman Brooks?
Hello, Madam Chair. I am going to defer my questions to my colleagues because most of them were already asked, and I'll submit my questions directly through administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Brooks. Councilwoman Gim?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your hard work and grace under pressure. I know this has been a very difficult time for everybody, and we really appreciate your work. For Shelley, the airport received about $116 million in federal relief money to support operations and lost revenue. Do you know if any of that money is being passed on to the entities like the airlines or subcontractors, food service, or other airport-related businesses in a way that might assist with like rent relief or deferrals or something like that?
Yeah, Councilmember Gim. So a couple things. One, the CARES Act money we were not allowed to use to offset revenue losses. So we couldn't just use it to give to other companies and things. We had to use it for expenses. So we're actually using the CARES money to offset personnel, debt service, and other COVID-related expenses. But that has allowed us to actually take care of the rest of our community in terms of rent relief. I'm going to ask Jim Tyrell to address specifically what we've done, because we have a relief program for all of our stakeholders.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Council Member. Again, my name is Jim Tyrell. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at the airports. So very early after the COVID-19 crisis hit, Philadelphia made a decision to waive all the MAGs for our terminal concessionaires. And we also deferred all of the payments that would have become due for 3 months. So April, May, and June for all of our airline partners, our terminal concessionaire partners, our rental car operators, et cetera. So yeah, we have provided much relief to our stakeholder partners.
Now, are there any, I know this is like an area that we try to continue to work on, but obviously, as you know, like a lot of people got hurt. A lot of our airport workers in particular got hurt. If we provide rent relief, do you know if there are any conditions on the rent relief in terms of like worker protections or like recalls? So like first people back can get recalled once businesses come into play. Have we put anything like that on there, or has that been discussed?
So we have not put formal conditions on any of the relief we've granted so far. However, some of the steps we've taken to assist the employers in rehiring those workers who were affected was we actually collected and retained all of the airport IDs that those employees have been issued by the federal government. So we will make the transition back into the work environment as easy as possible for all of those stakeholder partners.
Yeah.
So there is actually a huge incentive for them to rehire those people.
That's exactly right. I mean, I think what we're interested in, to the extent possible, and I know this is very difficult, but if the airport is using some of, passing along some of the benefits that came as a result, and is able to provide some of those things, it would be great if the workers who struggled for the past several months could be among the first to be recalled and that kind of thing. And if there, as you said, if you have, documentation on which ones actually had jobs, that would be a big help. And I know it would mean a lot to us to be able to try to push that along.
Anonymous
Yeah, thank you very much.
is now exiting.
Quick question for our water department, and that we are meeting for the first time, Commissioner, over Zoom, and I wish we could have sat down in person beforehand. But it is lovely to see you and welcome, and I'm really glad that you are in the position that you're in. Do you know if whether COVID, and I apologize if somebody asked this earlier, but do you know if COVID-19 is considered a special hardship for qualification into the water department's low-income program tab? Or has that been considered at all?
Well, I think we would look at all the financial parameters and make that decision. So why the person is having financial difficulty isn't the question as much as where do they situate, what can they pay? And so we would look at all their finances as a total package.
Okay. And is the water department's moratorium on the water shutoffs currently, first of all, I also wanted to thank you for being such a great partner on the, on not only on, not having a shutoff of people's water during this time, but, helping people get into additional payment plans, reaching out to people affirmatively. But when is the exact end to that moratorium, or have you thought about extending it for any period of time?
Well, it originally was going to end, I believe, May 15th. It's been extended now to June 15th.
Okay.
And we will evaluate where we are at that time. And if it needs to be extended, then we'll work with the Water Revenue Bureau, which has been a fantastic partner in this process. We both want to do the same thing. Both agencies want to help. And so it goes to June 15th, and we'll evaluate and extend if necessary.
Yeah, and again, and I hear my time clock. Generally, what we've been asking is that if there's a grace period so that people can get back on their feet once the state of emergency order is lifted, people can get their jobs back. The state has generally looked at, for example, evictions and court proceedings as 60 days beyond the state of emergency. We want the water department to be whole, but we also know how important housing is right now. So it would be great to continue this conversation. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, commissioners.
Sure, thank you, Council Lady. Our last and final question will come from Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much to our Water Commissioner and to Shelley Cameron at the airport for all of your work. Very quickly, for aviation, relative to the Municipal Energy Master Plan, with the onset of COVID-19, how has that changed your ability to meet the goals of that program?
If I don't know off the top of my head, if we could provide that answer to you in writing, we'd be happy to do so, if that's okay.
Excellent, thank you. And then two other very quick questions. One around, COVID-19 has had a major impact on opportunities for businesses across our city. Have you all been able to do anything around supporting your DBE capacity during this time? And then also your summer internship program. I know we love referring young people to that program and just wanted to know if that program will move to virtual this year or what's the status of that program. And then I have questions for water.
So unfortunately, I have some bad news to share regarding the summer internship program. We are not going to be doing it this year. I'm more concerned about keeping our full-time employees on board. And right now, honestly, especially between now and December, every dollar counts. And so we had to make the very difficult decision to cancel the summer internship program. Regarding the DBE businesses, we do have another bright spot, I guess, if there is one. I'm going to ask Kathy Padilla to talk about some of the programs that she's been doing throughout the crisis to try and assist those businesses.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Councilwoman, for the question. We've recently just provided free of charge a 9-month-long construction management program to our small, diverse businesses. And it covered everything from soup to nuts, from estimating business law, loans, bonding, and blueprint reading. And it gave DBEs a recognized credential from Temple University and increased their capacity to take on larger and more complex projects. In this interim, since COVID-19 started, we've increased our outreach virtually, and we've been trying to keep focused on informing and preparing firms for all of the relief packages that are coming up from all the different levels of government, state, local, and federal. And following up on that, we're trying to prepare them ahead of time for things. We just finished a webinar on the Paycheck Protection Program loans. And with that, what we're trying to do is focus on the forgiveness portion of the loan to help people prepare for the types of documentation they're going to need, some spreadsheets to help them coordinate that information, and help maximize the amount of forgiveness that they'll be able to get, and to where to keep apprised of where the changes and regulations are coming up, because they seem to be happening on the fly. We're also looking forward in the future to trying to do some virtual matchmaking between our primes and the DBEs, and we're probably going to segment that out to specific specialties to make it more useful to the DBEs.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Madam Chair, if you'll allow, I just have a few questions for the Water Department. First, Commissioner, welcome to Philadelphia. I know we had an opportunity to talk at the onset of this pandemic, and I just wanted to thank your department for participating in my office's town hall from our utility providers and for the information that was shared for our constituents. Really quickly on the Green Cities Clean Water program, your department was projecting meeting the year 10 compliance targets for that program. In the original FY21 5-year plan, you noted on the FY21 performance measures for planning and for environmental services that water is anticipating a significant increase in project completion in Q3 and Q4 of this fiscal year and throughout the next fiscal year. How has COVID-19 changed those projections, and do you anticipate requesting or obtaining any leeway from the state or federal regs or from the consent decree due to the current crisis?
Well, as you're aware, all construction stopped. And so legally, we'll be looking what our options are under a force majeure, act of God situation legally, which we would anticipate we would be able to gain some type of additional time on the back end to allow us to stay in compliance.
Okay, and then how would any of that regulatory type of relief impact the consent decree's year 15 target goals, if any?
Well, I don't know if we'll meet them or not at this point. We're going to do our best to meet them with the anticipation that we will meet them. But then if we need additional time, then we would apply for, like I said, for the force majeure. So you asked me to look into a crystal ball. I can't tell you exactly right now after the 60 days or so of COVID-19. We're going to have to evaluate as we go forward and then sharpen our pencils at the appropriate time.
Sure, thank you. I have additional questions I'll submit to the Council President's office. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Shelley and Randy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson. Let me just note for the record, a special thank you to you, Commissioner, and to you, Shelley, for your service, particularly right now. This is Grace Under Fire. It's taken all of our staffs, all of our departments to work during this difficult time, and we want you to know we thank you for your service. Just a tad bit of housekeeping for the benefit of the public record and all of the council members who are still with us. We have scheduled Monday, June 8th, 2020 from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. for department callbacks. On Tuesday, June the 9th from 9:30 to 12:30 and then 3 to 5. We have department callbacks first and then the public testimony from 3 to 5 p.m. And then on Wednesday, June the 10th, 2020, from 9:30 to 12:30, we have department callbacks. So for any council member, I know you all are going to submit some questions for the record, but if there's a question that you didn't get on the record today, remember they're coming back and we can also submit them in writing. With that being said, I want to ask, does anyone else have any more comments or questions for any of those who are testifying? Thank you so very much. There being none, this committee will stand in recess until Tuesday, May 19th, 2020 at 9:30 a.m., at which time we will reconvene on Microsoft Teams. Thank you all. We got through our first day of budget hearings online. Go Teams, go Council. Thank you all. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.